that it no that it turned out that's how you want to like light things up at night.
Yes, I agree. It's crazy.
Really?
Early humans looked at that and said, that'd make a good candle.
Yeah, that would really not
Whale?
just a candle. It's like not even a candle, but like
Yeah,
it's like
there's a lot-
electricity.
Whale?
First, we
There's a lot of
squeeze.
Moby Dick. A lot of Moby Dick is dedicated to whaling.
Well, it's a book about whales. Well, whale.
So it's
What was the?
it's a historical account of what whales were like.
Yeah, how you squeeze the whales to get the juice out.
Ah, okay.
I think my problem with that, because it was always very, very hard to take it seriously in any English class, because you were really young. It's like, this is really boring. And I just don't get the symbolism of it, because I just want to go outside and kick a ball around with my friends and eat my peanut butter jelly sandwich. So I'm not
We're
getting
going
this.
to fancy schools doing Moby Dick as a
Yeah.
elementary school student, apparently.
Look at that.
The problem is that all 19th century American literature sucks. It's all bad.
Yes.
Yeah, I would agree.
Maybe Walden. Walden's okay.
You have to. You have,
Elena's like,
Oh, we got
Elena's
some
like,
fighting work here.
yeah.
You have to understand that for like the Victorian era, like these novels were basically their TV, right? And like they are actually also often published as serials, like so that you would actually get like chapter installments, like TV episodes. So then they would compile it into a single novel, like how we buy like the box set DVD. Oh, sorry, excuse me, Blu-ray now.
Oh yeah.
So like a lot of it was just filler because they had to occupy themselves somehow.
Look,
Wait, they published them in chapters, so you
Yeah.
get them.
Yeah.
Oh, that makes sense. That makes
Yeah.
sense.
all the Dickens stuff and all that was for sure like that, right?
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I'm with you, Gordon. Moby Dick is the one thing that when I had to read in school, I was like, no, I'm not doing this. I'm just going to read the summary and BS my way through whatever I
I
can do
just
about it.
didn't read in school. So,
See,
there you
look,
go.
it worked out for
It
you.
worked out. Look at me now.
Sitting in the
You know what
right
I just
chair.
found out a day or two ago? IDG used to have a subsidiary called IDG Books, and it actually owned Cliff's Notes and
Oh, yeah.
Dummies.
Wow.
And
Really?
the dummies books. Yeah.
So
Oh.
I
my
learned-
now employer helped me cheat my way out of Moby Dick and Shakespeare and stuff when I was in school. It's great.
See, I like the Shakespeare. The Shakespeare it had violence and sex. It was really rowdy for high school.
Some of it.
Tennessee.
I had a teacher who only did Shakespeare for the whole year. She was a Shakespeare freak, and it burned me right out.
Yeah,
on it.
that would do it.
Oh, that's a bummer. I love Shakespeare.
You know what Shakespeare is?
Oh no.
Here we go.
Shakespeare is COBOL.
Like Battlestar Galactica COBOL,
No,
or
no,
like the
because
programming
COBOL
language for old people.
Battlestar Galactica COBOL is with a K. I mean COBOL with a C, which, not to date myself, which I actually studied. So I actually wrote decent COBOL because that was just what they taught you back then.
Yeah.
In the ancient days. But it really is like, if you want to think of it as a compute high level language designed for you not to F it up for everybody so everybody can understand it. But then like, wow, you have to write like 15 paragraphs to say one thing, to like do like one go-to statement in COBOL. That's Shakespeare. And then forth the sun.
That's so not true.
What,
This is
go
somebody who
outside?
hasn't read Shakespeare saying what he thinks Shakespeare. That's a better summary of what it's like to read Moby Dick.
You could
Yeah.
compress Shakespeare down, and like it would be like one
Nope.
page of a
Nope.
computer magazine program that would like be
Nope.
like, and then type go to.
Gordon obviously
Now hit
has
run on
not
your
read
Commodore
Shakespeare
64. Yay!
Look, the thing about COBOL, I worked with a COBOL guy in 1998-99 when we were doing Y2K bug fixes, because we had to have a COBOL guy for some VAX machine that was running in the back of the university computer lab that God only knows what it was running. It was probably running the website for the university or something stupid. But he was this crusty old guy with a huge, like bigger than Brad's beard, like huge beard.
Ooh.
And he was the saddest and angriest person that I worked with at the university, which really is saying a lot because it was full of sad and angry people.
Because it really is just a torturous. I mean, it's good because it's basically made so everybody can understand it. But there's just, for COBOL,
Laborious.
or anybody's ever written any COBOL. So yeah.
Well, speaking of angry people, we've got all the angry friends of the show in the chat. I'm just kidding. I don't think everyone's angry. Everyone's in a great mood.
Yeah. It's
You know,
Tuesday.
other than extenuating life circumstances, we're here. We're hanging out. I'm glad to see everybody. We got a friend of the show, Davina, Ziv, Coffee, CR Pole, Yeah,
All the friends.
All the friends are here. Thank you. We got big stuff to talk about. I think we should just go into it. Enough of
I
this,
think we should.
Enough of this Shakespeare talk.
And whales.
I never even read. Yeah. Cool. Gordon, you ready for the intro?
Although I will highly recommend Station 11. I don't know if anybody's ever seen it, but watch that over the. It's I forget where the hell it's streaming, but
Is that a Melville
highly recommend it.
adaptation?
Yeah, novel adaptation was turned into a miniseries that came out right as the pandemic had kicked in.
Oh, that's the Emily St. John thing, right? Emily St. something.
I read the book, but the series is really good. But it basically is like, of course, a lot of people, survivalist-minded people, will complain because it makes zero sense. But it does make sense if you understand that that's what theater majors would do in the apocalypse. Like,
That's funny.
all survivalist people say, oh, and then I would organize my canned foods and then ammo here and then this. And no, that's not how theater majors think. They're not, that's not how that's basic. So just think theater majors in the apocalypse, but it's a fantastic series. I
was on the fence about it, but that Theater Majors in the Apocalypse description, that just pushed me over the edge. I have to watch that.
The book was good. The book was real good. Yeah, I didn't watch the show.
Yeah.
And the mini series is even better in a lot of ways. So I just highly want to recommend that.
Okay. Nice.
My Chrome is locked up here again, but my notes are still good.
Oh,
so.
great. Friend of the show, Coffee says, Gordon, you have good taste. So there you go.
Thank you.
You got one
Thank
fan of Station 11. All right. No, let's do it.
All
Oh, wait,
right.
I don't even know. It just blinked. What is up with Chrome? Huh.
Maybe
Okay, ready?
CrowdStrike is striking you.
Oh my.
Or could be. I'm also running an Intel 13900 part, so maybe
Actually, you are.
Who knows?
Probably fine.
And that's not at defaults. I can guarantee you.
No. I was running default DDR5 because that's what I was running, and then I'm like, you know what? No,
you should
got to run XMP.
Look, you can run it up to 1.7, 1.8 volts. It'll be fine.
Just dump it in. Just open it up, dump it in. All those volts.
Are you ready?
Yeah, go ahead, Gordon.
In this episode of The Full Nerd, Intel finds a fix, CrowdStrike, and ROG Ally X reviews. Welcome to episode 310 of The Full Nerd. I'm your host, Gordon Mung, with co-host Brad Charkis.
Hello, Internet.
Adam Patrick Murray.
310. It's the big 310. Glad to be
I know.
here. Glad to be
Alina
here.
Yee.
Hello.
I'm going to continue with the introductions because there's a lot of people introduced. Will Smith.
I would have called that 310, I think, but I like 310. It has a nice ring to it.
Oh.
Eric.
And Willis Lai running the vertical and horizontal.
Hello, everyone.
Both of
Happy
'em.
Tuesday. 310 isn't it? Which area code would that be?
It's LA, right?
Is it LA?
Yeah, it is. I think
Yeah,
maybe
LA.
Pasadena though. So I think in LA they get angry because I think they have 213. Is 213 proper LA?
No, it says Los Angeles County,
310 was probably the old one.
including
and 210
Beverly Hills, Brentwood, Malibu, Pacific Palisades, Redondo Beach, Santa Monica, and Torrance, as well as Santa Catalina Island.
310 was
proper LA.
310 was born in 1992, probably because of fax machines.
Well, 213. So I'm saying 213 because LA City Hall is area code 213. So everyone in 213 will turn their nose up at you if you're 310 because you live in the middle of nowhere according to Los Angelinos. I'm sure.
Sorry,
Torrance
Redondo Beach.
Yeah, I was gonna
Womp
say.
Fun facts.
Yeah, okay. No segue to Intel.
Speaking of numbers.
Speaking of, we found numbers.
We found numbers, yeah. So
Gordon, what
big
the hell?
news- I know, it seems like it's weird because it's like after, it's been building up for at least 6 to 7 months. And frankly, it's been going on for longer than that for people that have been experiencing sporadic crashes on Intel-based 13th gen and 14th gen machines. But Intel yesterday actually published a statement that basically said, hey, we know, well, they didn't actually really say we know everybody's been losing patience, but they essentially have said that they have pretty much found the primary cause. And actually, I'm going to read the actual statement that they published on the Intel community.intel.com. But the actual statement also given to me yesterday by Intel itself is a little more fine-tuned, I think, because they decided.
Oh, you
maybe
got
the messaging
an
was-
official statement from them.
Yeah, as well.
In
But it's,
addition, okay.
but it's a little more fine-tuned. But basically, let's read this because essentially Intel is saying, hey, we think we have found. Actually, I'm trying not to editorialize this. Intel is saying we have found a cause of the instability reports on Intel 13th gen and 14th gen CPUs. So, quote, based on extensive analysis of Intel Core 13th and 14th gen desktop processors returned to us due to instability issues, we have determined that elevated operating voltage is causing instability issues in some 13th/14th gen desktop processors. Our analysis of returned processors confirms that the elevated operating voltage is stemming from a microcode algorithm resulting in incorrect voltage requests to the processor. Intel is delivering a microcode patch which addresses the root cause of exposure of elevated voltages. We are continuing validation to ensure that scenarios of instability reported to Intel regarding its Core 13th gen/14th gen desktop processors are addressed. Intel is currently targeting mid-August for patch release to partners following full validation. Intel is committed to making this right with our customers, and we continue asking any customers currently experiencing instability issues on their Intel Core 13th gen/14th gen desktop processors reach out to Intel customer support for further assistance. So that's the official statement published by Intel on community.intel.com. That was pushed out with the headline July 2024 update on instability reports on Intel Core 13 and 13th gen processors. And then also I want to point out, I got a little bit of a slightly fine-tuned statement from Intel, and I want to point out that the difference is, so from what I received is, Intel has determined that elevated operating voltage is a primary cause of the instability issues in some 13th and 14th gen desktop processors. Basically, the rest is essentially the same, but basically they're saying it's the primary cause in the actual sort of slightly finely tuned statement to me. And also, I do want to point out for people who are a little bit behind on a very, very fast moving story, that it's been really moving because obviously Gamers Nexus published a pretty high profile report as well last week. But on Reddit, there was an Intel's, and I did verify this with Intel that it wasn't just some rando on Reddit, but because I was like, well, okay, this looks pretty real, but I just want to make sure this is actually somebody who's like, yes, that's basically Intel evangelist Alex Hoyos. We can confirm, because basically, let me back this up a little bit. Last week, is it a week ago or 2 weeks ago that Steve put out his video on?
It must have been last week.
It was last
I was
week.
on vacation. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, because
Yeah, so
2 weeks ago was Wendell's, which is why we had him on.
Yeah, so we had Wendell on last week, and then also Steve put out a video basically saying that he's been, doing some investigation as well, talking to a lot of his sources, and he was like, maybe it's oxidation issues. Some of the people he's been talking to think it's oxidation issues, and the really troubling thing with the oxidation thing, some of his sources are saying is like, we're talking potentially millions of chips impacted by oxidation. And he was looking at some of the chips that he has that has oxidation. He was, I think, considering sending it out for failure analysis, very expensive amount of money to have a lab look at it for the oxidation stuff. So essentially also yesterday, Alex Hoyos, an Intel evangelist, put out on the Intel subreddit, quote, we can confirm that the oxidation manufacturing issue affected some early Intel Core 13th gen desktop processors. However, the issue was root cause and addressed with manufacturing improvements and screens in 2023. We have also looked at it from the instability reports on Intel Core 13th gen desktop processors, and the analysis to date has determined that only a small number of instability reports can be connected to the manufacturing issue. So basically they're saying, yeah, okay, there were some that were, potentially impacted by oxidation issues, but this is not what the continuing problem with 13 and 14 gen parts are. So basically they're batting down the Gamers Nexus video saying this is the main cause.
Small cause, big cause is what we're here. It was the TLDR.
Yeah.
Okay.
And, again, the statement given out to me and probably some other outlets that contacted Intel was primary cause is the elevated operating voltage stemming from a microcode algorithm resulting in incorrect voltage request of processor. I also do want to clear up one other thing because, again, we went from basically months and months of people sort of coming up with maybe it's this, maybe it's that. I've heard this. I've talked to this person about this. There was a game developer, I think about a week ago, maybe a week and a half ago, that says like, hey, this isn't only desktops. We are also seeing this on laptops. And so, of course, people were like, because this whole time, I have not ever heard that it has impacted laptops. I don't think any of Wendell's stuff got into laptops. He basically looked at
actually no.
crash
He
reports.
did see some stuff on laptops. Yeah,
so he did see some stuff on laptops, but basically, the developer said it's also impacting laptops, not as much as desktops. Intel actually put out a statement last week, and I will point to a Mark Hockman story if I can find it on the website PCWorld. I just want to catch everybody up on basically theories and basically what Intel's response has been. Basically, last week, that was all during games that said thousands of crashes, blah, blah, blah. But Intel's response to that has been, quote, Intel is aware of a small number of instability reports on Intel Core 13th Gen and 14th Gen mobile processors. Quote, based on our in-depth analysis of the reported Intel Core 13th and 14th Gen desktop processor instability issues, Intel has determined that mobile products are not exposed to the same issue. Quote, the symptoms being reported on 13th Gen / 14th Gen mobile systems, including system hangs and crashes, are common symptoms stemming from a broad range of potential software and hardware issues. Quote, as always, if users are experiencing issues with their Intel-powered laptops, we encourage them to reach out to the system manufacturer for further assistance. So that, for the most part, catches us up to where we're at right now. Although I do want to point out, if you go to the story on PCWorld.com, at the bottom of it, I have a video from Robitech that I think is actually valuable because he put together a video, Robitech, and we've seen, hey Justin, we've seen you at a couple shows as well. He put together a video that I think is valuable because he sort of goes over the problems and also sort of some methods that he thinks will help you identify if you have an impacted problem. I mean, there's many, many different ways that have been pushed out by vendors. One of the methods he has is basically, this is not going to help if you have a Radeon or ARC or card, but basically reinstall the NVIDIA drivers. And if you have an impacted processor, probably about the 6 or 7 time you install those drivers, you're probably going to run into this problem if the chip is unstable. And also, he does point out, he also goes over some of the motherboard stuff you should do as well, because that is something that Falcon Northwest has pointed out to me as well. It's like, yeah, you know what, the microcode thing is great, but you still also have to make sure you have to, you do have to apply these motherboard adjustments because, the motherboards are not still doing quite right in their opinion. Go ahead, Brad. Sorry. A lot of stuff to take in.
No, that was it. That was just weird that if you install the NVIDIA drivers a bunch of times, it'll make your Intel CPU freak out by them.
It's because of the way they pack the drivers, right, Gordon?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thought, because remember, that was really, really early on, because not only that, but the people were reporting they had issues installing drivers, they had crashes, and then also people had real problems when they were compiling shaders, right? Yeah. That was like often things I had heard from people like, just compiling shaders, and I had problems, and, basically clearing out the shader cache cleared up my problems for a while anyway, until it came back because their chip eventually grew unstable again. So
Call of Duty's shader compilation would crash on my machine pretty reliably early on the first bad processor.
I will say Steve is in the chat. Hi, Steve. Tried
Hey, Steve.
to get us that link that you had covered earlier to the oxidation thing, which Steve was talking about. I've definitely heard some people say, like, wait, hold on. So Intel came across this oxidation issue. They're saying that they were able to clear it up and that it is no longer affecting processors. Some people are angry because they found this and they never made this a public thing. Should Intel have come out and been like, hey, we found this problem, but it's okay. It's been solved.
I do agree with that assessment because I think at this point, in fact, and one thing I want to point out about the statement that was released yesterday by Intel is if you plainly read it, it is something that I feel like this thing has been like closely read by the legal department to basically not leave any openings because they are bracing themselves clearly for potential class action lawsuits by impacted end users. And, you read it because there's just not a lot of information here. More information would help. And the reason this is my long-winded way of saying I agree with Steve because, at this point, because people are so freaked out by this whole thing and because there's been so many theories and so many guesses and so many crazy things that have been going on for now an extended period of time, in excess of 7 months, right? This has been going on well into 2023, perhaps even earlier, right? That it feels like we want to see a full accounting for all the information. This statement doesn't do that. And and I want to see that information because frankly, it would make me feel better. It would make people who are, and I'm running a 13 gen CPU in this machine right now. It would make everybody feel better. So more information would make everybody feel better. But I can tell you the way this thing is written, even this line here, like if you look at it, our analysis of return processors confirms that the elevated operating voltage is stemming from a microcode algorithm resulting in incorrect voltage request to the processor.
What does that mean?
That means is, frankly, if I were to write it, I would write a faulty microcode algorithm was giving the CPU too much, right? Like I'm not going to say I work at a large cloud-based security company, but I wrote this. I got to hey, wait. I'm going to go to Taco Bell with you. I'm going to write this out. I push it out. I go jump in the car to go to Taco Bell with everybody.
I love Taco Bell.
But frankly, right, you would go like, okay, this must obviously mean a faulty microcode algorithm. But there is no way in hell at this point that Intel is going to write a faulty microcode algorithm. Yes, that's obviously implied. We can all assume that.
No. They couldn't have done that. That's impossible.
There is no way any company is going to come out and say, yeah, we F that up. Yeah, we're juicing those processors.
Well, but also this takes it off of the motherboard manufacturer too to be like, no, it's not the motherboard forcing extra voltage in there. No, our microcode was asking for that.
Well, and to me, the weird part is the request to the processor, because that's like the object-subject thing there is a little bit weird for me, because it seems like the processor should be requesting the voltage from the motherboard, and there's a lot of passive voice weirdness here that is not implying any intent to anything.
Yeah, no, I mean it's very clearly written to lower. They just don't want to give information, any extra ammunition to lawyers, because you know damn well there are lawyers sitting all over the globe right now saying, how can we cash out on this? And I know a particular really good class action lawyer. I've worked with him in the past that actually in the end would actually help. But there's a lot of class action lawyers that just want to collect a bag here. They want to get that payoff. And they're looking for it right now. So, they're not exactly our friends because, hey, by the way, we sued. Here's your $1.38, right? Because we've all gotten those settlements from everybody. So that's...
Well, I have a question. Why post this on the Intel community forum?
Well, that's a good question.
Rather than somewhere else, or even sending it to media outlets? Because I guess I should confirm, did you reach out to Intel for your comment, or did they send you the information?
So after seeing the other stories, because I think I ran across Paul's Hardware. Paul's Hardware. I ran across Tom's Hardware story by Paul Alcorn first, and then it's like, because yesterday I decided to put my head down for a nap, and I woke up and like the world had like really like we'd been like everybody.
That's how it happens.
Suddenly it's like that's how it happens.
That's how it happens.
So I did reach out to Intel and I got a response, and I got a little slightly finely more tuned one because again they're like the key word there is like it's the primary cause. So, but
the fact that
why put it there?
Why have two answers?
Well, and why not dump this out to all media outlets and be like, hey, just really want to let you know about this situation.
They are trying to sweep this under the rug. It's the lawyer fear, like Gordon was mentioned. There's no way they would blast this out to everybody. If someone wants to come ask, they will give them the information, but they're just going to shove this in the back corner of the forum somewhere.
But it's really weird to me that they have one answer on the forums and one answer they send to press. Like usually when you have something like this, it's completely locked down. It's like, here's our official statement, and it's the exact same thing everywhere they send it out.
Yeah, no, it is a little odd, but this is the community statement. And actually, they've been, in this whole time, a lot of their statements on this have been published on the community forum, I think, because they're directly addressing customers. And, essentially, as much as the press likes to think that we are above everybody, we are essentially no different than the public, right? So, and I don't know if they would really want to put this on their press release page. I really feel like they really want to leave this up to, it's a customer support issue. If you are having problems, RMA the chip, right? That feels like their stance at this point.
So the big difference is the change from primary to root, right? That's the big difference in the two things. That makes me think, I was reading Ryan's coverage at Anantech this morning, and he makes the point that this is kind of a best case scenario, because if it was something that was involved in the BIOSes or something with or physical or something like that, it'd be a much bigger pain in the butt. Pushing out a microcode update is something that can be done through Windows. It can hit most customers without any real headache. Updating BIOSes and stuff, that probably doesn't happen. But he devoted half of his article to making the point that it's good that this is fixed now, or says it's going to be fixed soon. But microcode is kind of a weasel answer, a wishy-washy answer. It doesn't really answer anything. It doesn't tell you what actually happened. And in the past, companies have used, we need a microcode update to be able to hide other things that have happened deeper. So I wouldn't be surprised if somewhere deep in Intel's laboratory, they know that there's some sort of physical thing going on here, and they can fix it with microcode. So that might be a reason to change it from primary to root. But it's interesting ordeal.
And also last week when we were talking to Wendell, one of the things he was talking about was, why not come out with a good faith thing? Obviously their reputation, there's a lot of talk about their reputation, and appeasing everyone's fears. And hey, one of the ways to maybe help, iron that over is to offer RMAs it was the $50 overclocking thing. What did Wendell call
insurance?
it? Yeah. So it'd be like, hey, you know what? No problem. Even if you're out of warranty, we'll cover you. And nothing like that in here either. Nothing. Essentially, the call to action at the end was, hey, if you're having a problem, be sure to send it in. But no, like, make good to be like, hey, you know what? We understand people's fears. You know what? We're gonna do right by the customer, kind of stuff.
I mean, to me, Intel is committed to making this right with our customers. Says that if I feel like I have an affected machine, if it's not showing indicative problems, when I call them and say, hey, I want a new processor, they should send me a new processor, right?
I suspect that's going to happen.
I would be pretty upset if I paid for a 14900K or KS or even a 14700K and like they didn't do that.
Well, I'm sorry. Oh, here we go. A friend of the show, Coffee, said, and this is just anecdotal, obviously, nothing against you, Coffee, but this week a friend located in the U.S. RMA'd a 13700K and only got a refund of the money.
I heard
rather
from
than hardware.
Friend of the show who had just RMA'd a 14900K that it was a little bit of a painful process. So,
well, because who knows how much stock, how much inventory they have, depending on how widespread it is.
Look, they just take the old ones, slap the new microcode on them, and ship them back out. It's probably fine, right?
When that actually touches on one part that I found interesting in Tom's hardware coverage, which I haven't seen somewhere else. I'm guessing he asked them a couple of follow-up questions because Paul says they were told that, this microcode update won't fix ones that already have issues, which makes sense. They're physically deteriorating the chip at this voltage. But it'll stop the issue from appearing going forward in CPUs where it's not already an issue. And Intel's saying, hey, and if your chip doesn't work, try to send it back. So, I mean, what else could they do?
Yeah, I was go ahead.
I see a point though where it's like how you present the solution will affect how the customer feels about it. So I see Adam's point to that, where if they had a much more organized, effortless way of doing it, especially with the anecdotal stuff that Will was just saying about how it's very, very painful. This kind of feels a bit almost like the bean counters are involved, where they're like, let's kind of like, with mail-in rebates, where they're like, well, make the offer. You can get this money so your final cost is lower. But they're banking on the fact that some people are going to forget to send in the mail-in rebate. They just won't do it at all, whatever. And so it sounds kind of like this situation here where it's like, well, if you have a problem, then you can reach out to us, but we're not going to do, I guess, maybe the equivalent of like the red ring of death thing with the original Xboxes, where they're just like, nope, just we'll make it super easy for you, because it's just such a massive undertaking logistically and probably financially for them.
Well, I get the feeling that Wendell and Steve's awesome coverage, awesome reporting in the last few weeks, kind of caught Intel out here. For them to have an answer this week after Steve Gamers Nexus put out that video last week, they had to have been pretty close to it anyway. But I think we're hoping to have I would not be surprised if they were hoping to have something more polished presented at the time. They're like, hey, we found the microcode update. It's the middle of August. We're rolling it out. Here's the full plan kind of thing. I think they might be skiing ahead of their skis a bit here.
We got a comment here. I'm going to turn it into a question from Ally X3. Sorry. Said, don't RMA for replacements. Always go for the refund. Is that something you would recommend, Gordon? If you're an affected customer, should you just get a refund and go run for AMD?
No, I mean, it depends on what situation you're in, but I think that doesn't help a lot of people because, well, it can and can't, because if you have a very nice Z790 board, you have your $500 motherboard, and now you don't have a 14900K to put in there, it's nice to get that refund and maybe put a lower end chip in there to go to the next chip. And there have been rumors of these all performance core version, chips coming out to LGA 1700. And honestly, it's kind of like a free gimme, right? Like, I can go from 8 performance cores to 10 or 12 performance cores in this, Bartlett Lake rumored part. That's actually kind of like a nice gimme in a lot of ways. But at the same time, some people just want simply the exact same thing in there. But I think as long as you're not just stuck holding a $500 motherboard that you have no chip in, that's okay. It's going to be up to each consumer for what makes them happy. But I would say, if you can go from if you have an older 13900K and you now basically can take the refund and go buy the brand new Bartlett Lake chip if it suddenly comes out, then I would not feel unhappy about that, right? So especially if it's faster. So
Deotis points out too, you reset the clock on your warranty when you buy the new chip after the refund, whereas you get the warranty refund extension when you get the warranty replacement.
That's true too, right? Yeah, because if you go out and buy a brand new chip, then you get So I mean, that's not. And I know, and the real problem here, and this sort of gets back to what Steve was saying, because should they have come clean to say this? And I would say at this point, yes. I'm sure in every piece of consumer hardware and software you can buy, there's little bits of roaches and rats in there that you don't know about, right? You don't want to know how many little bits of rats are allowed in your hot dog at the ballpark.
No, you don't.
I wouldn't want taste good. It's just extra protein.
I wouldn't want them to always call this out, but the problem is at this point, because you basically have, what was it, Wendy's that had the finger in the chili? I forget what it was.
That was a fake. That wasn't a real thing, it turns out.
It turned out that was
all these food analogies.
Gordon's
what
hungry.
I'm saying is, at this point, when you basically you've burned all of your goodwill with consumers because this has just simply dragged on for far too long.
Yeah. That
it would be good if they just came forward with everything, right? Because you would just feel better. It would make everybody feel better because Intel they really have to rebuild a lot of goodwill at this point. And it's not destroyed. If this had gone on, it would have been even worse. And, frankly, if Bartlett Lake comes out and Arrow Lake comes out and it basically is now suddenly the best CPU desktop part, people won't even remember this. It won't even be a blip on the radar, But I still feel like there's going to be some people, there's going to be some ill will that they have to overcome, but at the same time, if they basically are in the RMA process of saying, yeah, hey, you know what, here's your full refund back for your chip. That's pretty damn good, right?
Yeah.
Like that's not bad. And I want to point out, because this is the one thing, because obviously everybody's angry. They want to grab their pitchforks and torches. Intel, yeah, they haven't, it's been really slow. Everybody's patience is worn threadbare. This has not been 100% failure rate. Yes, we don't know exactly what the failure rate on these are. We don't know what the impact it is, but it is generally assumed to be fairly small, right? There's not a 100% failure rate, and so I just want people to understand that, right? But it's just know of, right?
But this microcode update, the fact that it's the microcode update that's forcing the physical degradation of the chip, I think that over time it would get close to 100% failure rate without that microcode patch enabled. And so I would think that most chips out there would have some sort of chip degradation, and just by the nature.
And it's not like the Red Ring where like if you turn on Dead Rising one day and your Xbox has 3 red lights on, you're like, oh well, I got to get a new one. It is the Ziv said this a while. The destabilization of the processor means that there's some trust issues. So that now it's like playing a video game where that there's some anti-cheat problems, and you're like every time you die, it's like, did I just get owned legitimately, or was that somebody who was cheating? And it's the same thing. Every time your computer crashes or a tab crashes or something weird happens, you're like, oh man, is this crappy 13900K? And that's bad. Like having lived with that for a long time, I will tell you, it is not good for your mental health. And it sucks when you use a computer for something more than just playing video games and dinking around on the internet.
Yeah, and I would disagree. I would say this is actually very similar to Red Ring of Death because in the end that turned out to be basically thermal cycles on, basically a poorly engineered motherboard design in the Xbox originally. So,
but the failure was different. The failure was clear on Red Ring, and on this,
you could see a red thing saying, "Hey, it's not working."
It stopped working. This stops working sporadically and unpredictably over time.
Yeah, but I think the thing about the Red Ring of Death, it wasn't about whether, it wasn't a question of if your original Xbox was going to die or if it was going to die. It was just simply when. And eventually, once you put enough thermal cycles on it, poof, right? It blew up. So again, that was, they've essentially, that was 100% of all the original Xboxes.
Right? I think if you put 1.7 volts through a 13900K, it's a matter of time, not when, not if.
Yeah.
Like,
but here's the other thing too. Yeah. I also want to point out, which is very interesting. So the statement today says, based on extensive analysis of Intel Core 13th and 14th gen desktop processors, right?
Yep.
So I'm going to go back to an older statement. Let me see, because let's go back to the statement from basically a month ago. June 18th. June 2024 guidance regarding Core 13th and 14th gen K, KF, KS instability issues.
So they extended it to all the 14th, 13th gen processors.
Well, basically, so they basically were. I mean, but maybe this is some. Again, there may be some compartmentalization by them here, but basically they were saying here's basically the recommendations for what TDPs be running the K, the K parts at K, KF, KS. But this one basically seems to like say 13th and 14th gen. So again, this is like some of that again, this is the problem is more information would be better. Because this is just basically now everybody's like, I've got a Core i5, 13th gen. Should I have to worry about this? For the most part, all the indications are, it's rarely impacted. Everyone I've talked to, and I think all of Wendell's and Steve's things are like, yeah, it is mostly higher end parts, but there are always some things where people did have problems with the other chips as well, right? There were also sporadic things like, oh yeah, so maybe an i7K part would have an issue, but for the vast majority of them, they weren't. But
so the other thing that this doesn't address though is that like we have a board that is pretty reliable at killing these processors here.
Yeah.
We put 14700K that got kind of hinky after we put it in there for a little bit. We have a 14900KS that's hinky now. Sorry about that, Adam, by the way. So like, how does this doesn't answer why that happened, right? Because they're saying this is inherent in the processors.
It doesn't actually answer that, but I think it's part of the whole thing because and again, this is the reason why for 7 months, it's felt like the old story of blind men feeling the elephant.
Yeah.
Not knowing what it is, right? Because everybody had different theories, right? Everybody was like, and the crazy thing is, like, I'll tell you, going all the way back to the early days, somebody said, like, we heard it was just a bad microcode update and that Synthesis would be fixing it. And then it's like, okay, that sounds pretty simple. And then it turned into like, no, it's not. Like, nobody knew what it was. And then it kind of continued on. So I would wonder, like, so microcode algorithm, the boards, and again, Kelt has been saying this at Falcon Northwest, like, you also got to do all these settings in these motherboards because they are definitely not running in spec, right? So the boards were pushing it really hard. I mean, it just could have been everything that just added up to, tolerant stack up, right? Maybe the microcode algorithm added up with this. And but again, I'm just theory crafting and nobody knows, right? So, I mean, but but it sounds like the microcode basically with the latest BIOS updates, UEFI, because that's how you're going to get it anyway, because you're going to install a UEFI update from your board vendor. You get the microcode update. Hopefully the board vendors have gotten it all right, and then this basically should put an end to it, hopefully, right?
It kind of makes me feel like my initial thoughts behind this are kind of accurate. Like, when this first started happening, I kind of felt like just everyone was flying too close to the sun just this generation. Like the 14900K, like they pump ridiculous amounts of juice in there to begin with.
Yeah.
All these board vendors are, throwing caution to the wind, pumping as much as they can in there to, be the best, big bar better. If this microcode flaw, if it's like, hey, we're going to give you 5% more voltage than we're supposed to, even just some small number, it would kind of make sense that it would be the high-end, like maxed out chips in the high-end maxed out boards that feel it the worst.
It's true.
And maybe but also it could be the mid-range parts could still be affected. It's just going to take longer to get there.
Yes.
Who knows?
Yes.
Yeah. I will say I did update a Gigabyte motherboard yesterday, and in the description, part 2 that this update came in July 2nd, said introduces Intel default settings and enabled as default. User needs to disable it first to get other performance profiles. So by default, it's at least this Gigabyte board specifically.
And that's the 1.0 version of the Z790, which they've updated a couple of times too, right?
Yeah.
Do you think they're going to have to Intel's going to have to release a tester application that lets you see if your CPU's experience degradation?
That'd be nice.
It would be nice. I don't think they will, because again, they fully understand what's the potential that could happen here, right? And it feels like it's something that they have to decide on their end, because it feels like, yes, that would be great if they could release a tool that could tell you if your chip had been degraded. And that, I mean, but again, that's the real question, right? Because again, Paul Alcorn, read Tom's Hardware story on this. I was unable to confirm that with Intel, but Paul Alcorn basically said, like, the microcode basically should correct any incorrect voltage going to the chip. It doesn't fix already degraded chips, but it should prevent additional degradation on it. But it also doesn't tell you, was your chip degraded, right? So should Intel release a tool to do that, or is it even possible? I don't know. It certainly would be nice. I don't know if they're going to, because it's that probably comes down to internal decisions of like, how bad do we want to make this? Do we really want to tell everybody there's maybe a little bit more cockroach and rat in our food again? Because that's, and again, I know people they want to blame Intel in this case, but every single company in every single product, there are flaws and there are problems in every single product. They don't come out and ever tell you about it because you know what? You really want to buy my Gordon on hot dog? By the way, there's 2% rat meat in this, but this one may have had 3 or 4%. That's not how you sell products, and that's not how you keep yourself from getting your ass suit off, right? Because that's just not the way people do things. It would be nice. I do agree with you, Will, but it may be something that's just simply left up to community efforts. Again, like watch the ROG Tech video. If you have an NVIDIA card, install and reinstall NVIDIA drivers 5 or 6 times. If it blows up, then you may have a problem, right?
Yeah, it's good that they're talking about it finally. I like that their statement said, "Hey, we want to make this right with people," because that is a thing that the lawyers will tack on if they decide not to start keeping RMAs. And we're moving in the right direction. The last thing I wonder about is people who have motherboards that aren't getting BIOS updates anymore. They won't have access to these microcode updates at this point, right?
Oh, I'm sure it'll be pushed across all LGA 1700 socket boards that support 13 and 14 gen.
It'll just take a while.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, yeah. If you have high profile boards, Z790 gets service first, and then I'm sure it'll be newer boards always get service first, then to the older boards. But it should waterfall down onto all boards. I'm sure it'll just take time. So I can't imagine a board vendor like going, "Yeah, we're gonna have you fix this by buying a new board." So they fully understand they have a responsibility here too, because
you buy the new board, you put the processor in it, you update the UEFI, and then you return the board, and it's problem solved.
There you go.
I mean, the big problem too is like the vast majority of regular people who buy SI based systems, are they really going to push out UEFI updates? I mean, this is something that you push out over Windows Update because it can be done. It can be done.
I think you would have to. That's what Ryan at Anantech is leaning towards. What will happen now? They would push this out through Windows, because otherwise, like even hardcore gamers, like 85% of folks don't update their motherboard BIOS ever. Not once. Not unless there's a new feature that's coming out, like smart access memory or whatever like that.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I mean, it is not a satisfactory answer for everybody. People are still going to feel very, very unhappy with this. Frankly, I'm not happy with this because I want more information. Because you want to know, I want to know more information, because this is not enough to make anybody feel happy with this at all. And hopefully, Intel at some point will come clean with more information. I would, but again, what I'm saying is, I understand how large corporations act when they understand there are huge legal liabilities at stake. As an end user, I want more information. I would like to feel better about this. Whether that's going to happen or not, I don't know. And then the question is, as an Intel customer, what do you do? Right? And I think for the most part, people understand. Generally, if you are unhappy with how this is all rolled out, you know what exactly to do with your money, right? That's the answer you should always do.
Buy Qualcomm,
vote
right?
with your wallet. Oh God, yeah.
Well, if I were an Apple customer, I would say, I'll just buy the next Apple product to fix this faulty.
I trust them that they fix it.
If you don't like those butterfly key switches, Gordon, I don't want to hear about it. Just upgrade your MacBook. You'll be fine. It's only another $1,200-$1,300.
It worked. Oh, that was such a great solution. So no, I mean that is exactly what people should do, because I mean, that's the reason why we live on the PC, right? If you are like, man, I am so sick of this, I am unhappy with this, I'm just still wondering if my chip is going to go, turn over like a goldfish one day. You know what? Brand new AMD 9000 part. Maybe that's what I want to do, right? Because and frankly, that's what you do on the PC, because that's what you should do.
Maybe don't buy used 13900Ks or 14900Ks.
If you find one on the ground, put it in your socket.
Maybe it's in the back of your seat back on the airplane.
Yeah, there you go.
I don't think. Do the warranties extend to to third parties if you buy it used? I don't think so.
I don't
right?
think so. No, I don't know.
I can't imagine that.
I think if you have a copy of the original receipt, you might be able to do it, but you'd have to ask the seller for that.
Yeah.
I had a point to make and I forgot. Yeah. So we can move on, I guess. Yeah. Oh no, that's what I was going to say. I do actually think yes, the internet outrage pony rides fast and quick onto the new thing. But I do think that this will be remembered for a while. Like I do think that this, I mean, if anything, will at least affect Arrow Lake. That people will have it under more of a microscope than usual. But hey, I mean, we still hear people today being like, "Oh yeah, I don't buy AMD GPUs because their drivers, they're still a little got some problems." And
Look,
right.
If this ends up with all motherboard manufacturers shipping a stock clock option that's on by default and you have to turn it off to go back to overclocking again, that's probably an okay outcome, right?
I'm okay with that.
Gordon's going to yell at me now.
No, I talking to board vendors over the months of this problem, the board vendors think they do something special. And I know the internet thinks all they do is basically attach heat sinks and LEDs and charge you $800 for a motherboard. They do a lot of special sauce to the UFIs. They actually do a lot of engineering to the boards that, this is entirely a Taiwanese mindset. They like performance. They like chasing performance because most desktop people like performance.
It's a Gordon mindset too.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, but they, because that's the whole thing. It's what has driven the PC desktop so far is like people get your special tuning, you get all access to the knobs and dials that they want, and you get a little more performance. So they actually throw the engineering resources at every single board to make it a little bit faster. So that's sort of when you get that competitive mindset, I want to be faster than brand B, brand C, brand D, and I build this into the board and I'm actually dedicating engineering resources to do it. Do I now want to ship this board to you where basically there is zero difference between my $800 motherboard and the competitor's $500 motherboard?
Oh, no, there's differences.
Out of the box. Well, I mean, yeah, it's got different LEDs, it's got different heat spreaders, but I'm saying
come on, there's more than that. There's feature sets. Yeah.
There's actually feature sets and there's actually performance differences, and there's actually things that they each do to the boards to make them special. So I would, and again, I'm just saying that the board vendors would say we are doing this because we think our customers like performance. And if you really want us to basically everything set at the same base level out of the box, and you're never going to actually tune this thing up for the special performance, why am I wasting money, hundreds of thousands of dollars on all the engineers to pay them to make this board so much better than my competitors, right? I mean, it really does, it does directly impact this because if you basically want an OEM motherboard that's bone stock, then why the hell would you want to buy this really special motherboard with all this bling on it?
I mean, that's not what's happening though. If somebody wants to go in, they can. If somebody really is like, oh yeah, I need the best performance ever, they can still go in. It's just by default, it's not that.
Well, and in the old way, if you had a problem and you were having stability problems, there's not a real easy way for you to set everything back to the Intel defaults because that setting didn't exist, right? Like you had to have a Celt level understanding of how the computer worked to go in and turn off all the VL, turn everything all the way down. And like that's a like I had to bring a computer. I've been doing this for a really long time. I had to bring a computer in here and we had to go through all the settings to get back to what Intel recommended for that processor. And that's ridiculous. Like that's not something you should expect even enthusiasts to have to know how to do.
Yes, and again, we've gotten to the point where, I mean, frankly, nobody can understand any of the damn things anymore.
Right.
They've just, because, and it is a little weird because they basically put extreme overclockers, because that really is just, that's been the mantra. We're going to put extreme overclockers. They're going to give you all, because you want to have, you watch Buildzoid videos. You want to be like Buildzoid. You want to be like DeBauer, right? So you want all these knobs and everything. I'm too stupid to know all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
No, I just want I just wanted to run okay out of the box. That's all I'm looking for.
But they still give you all these features, and frankly, I think the problem is we have a weird disconnect because, like, again, in your brain you think you're DeBauer, but you're not. You're just Gordon. So like, I don't know what the F this thing does, right? But you know what? there's no way the board vendor would let me blow up any of my hardware if I get all these knobs, because there's no way I could damage it. This knob, they would not give me the ability to damage my hardware, right? Because I'm just a stupid consumer. I'm just twisting knobs here. So I can understand that being a problem. But I guess the one thing I just want to add is I think what fundamentally is weird about this whole thing with 13th gen, and frankly, let's be honest, 14th gen is just refresh, right? There's not much of a difference. We didn't see this with Alder Lake. We didn't see it with Rocket Lake. We didn't see it with anything previous. You take your board out, you basically set it to, you turn XMP on, you do this, couple performance settings. And we've never had problems like this before. It really is mostly confined to 13th and 14th gen. And that to me is like the weirdness about this. But it just sort of says like, yeah, we're just pushing the margin way too hard in these parts.
Yeah.
Right. And it really is just it's turned into the problem that it is right now. But it didn't happen to a 12th, 11th, 10th, 8th gen, right? Because you could do all this stuff all day and it was of no danger. But with these parts, we've clearly gone over the wall, right? So where we go from here, I don't know. Yeah. Where do we go? I mean, are we just simply hinting the end of what we can do with these chips? Where does it sort of say the performance going down the road because we keep making things smaller and thinner and the wire's thinner? What else can we really do as end users to get that sort of like tuning thing? I don't know.
I mean, we were just down in LA, chatting with AMD about upcoming Ryzen 9000 processors, and they were talking a lot about efficiency and all that kind of stuff. So I think that's where the pendulum's swinging. So
yeah, maybe we have to sort of like swerve away from the whole like I want to get absolute max. Remember when people freaked out because like, oh my God, my AMD processor, I'm getting 50 less megahertz than what they claim. And that went on for like weeks, right? And like, oh, mine's is like 25 megahertz less. And then it just like turned into this like big problem for AMD. It's like, really? Come on.
Yeah.
But
anyway, we should move on because we have some other topics to talk about.
Anything big happened last week? Something like Friday morning?
Did it?
The CrowdStrike.
Small.
Oh, no, I'm just kidding. No, it's not CrowdStrike.
Like
CrowdStrike.
Anyone had flight delays?
Well,
Yeah.
I've had several friends talk about it on social media. They are very angry.
Same.
Keith May was his flight was delayed.
On Thursday night, the late night local news came on because I was watching network TV, oddly enough, and the newscaster was sitting there with there were no graphics, there was nothing. It was just like a newscaster sitting
They're
at the desk.
Chiron, just like,
And they were like, all of our
screens.
computers are down, so this newscast is going to be weird. Right now, it's an ongoing, and it was the first I heard of it, was like the 10 o'clock local news on local CBS or whatever.
did they have their prompter working at
Wow.
least?
No, like, look,
Really?
she looked,
Like they had papers. They were like, all right, we're going to go back to the old school way of reading off.
she looked genuinely shook and was like, we're going to do the best we can. Just bear with us, folks. They didn't have green screen stuff or anything. It was amazing. And then, of course, the next morning you wake up and the whole world stopped.
Oh man, wow.
my.
That would be interesting to be like, okay, well, what do I do here? That's why we don't use prompters here.
No,
I mean,
we're just keeping it real.
We just keep it going.
Very real.
All right, so somebody
Talking
needs
about,
to walk us
rats and
through.
hot dogs.
Somebody needs to walk us through what the hell this is because I still don't even fully understand it. Who's going to do it?
You mean I can go?
Will do it.
Okay, so
I was on vacation last week, guys. I know the high level stuff.
Yeah.
okay, so CrowdStrike is a security software that runs software in the kernel.
Who uses that?
Big corporations. It turns out people who are worried about ransomware and malware, zero-day threats, stuff like that. And like most antivirus software, it runs at the kernel level. So there's two levels of software that run on your computer. One is the user level, which is where like Office and Chrome and all of your programs run. If something crashes in user space, that application crashes, and then you relaunch the application, everything's cool.
Okay.
At the kernel level, that's where you have access to like all the memory and all the heap and all the stuff.
That's where all the microcode is.
I don't know about microcode.
No, I'm kidding.
It's all the low level software that makes Windows run. It's like the memory manager that says, "Hey, Chrome gets access to this memory." Where that stuff runs in the kernel. And when something crashes in the kernel, the computer blue screens because generally at that point the whole state of the system is questionable, and you don't want to make things worse, so you just stop the computer from doing what it's running. Dave's Garage did a good video about this yesterday, the day before. So it's worth checking out if you're curious and want to know more.
Thanks.
But the upshot is antivirus stuff and like anti-cheat and some stuff like some other types of software run at the kernel level in Windows, which is a whole other conversation we can have in a little bit. And as a result, when problems happen with an antivirus software, it crashes the whole machine. It blue screens the whole machine. So CrowdStrike is this system protection security software. It runs at this very low level, and they push an update out on Thursday night, which never update at the back half of the week. Always updates on Monday and Tuesday. But and their updates, because of the way CrowdStrike works, instead of drivers that run at a really low level, at kernel level in Windows, have to run through this WCL Windows Hardware Qualification Lab certification process.
Who runs that?
Microsoft runs that.
Okay.
It takes some time, and often vendors of security products, because they're worried about getting fixes for security issues out as fast as possible, do some stuff that bypasses that process. So instead of sending each update to their service through a WCL certification process, they just have a WCL driver that then checks something on the hard drive that their client updates, and so the whole process doesn't get updated every time it changes. The whole thing doesn't get WCL certified every time it changes.
Okay.
So what happened on Thursday night was CrowdStrike sent out an update, and that update caused the machines to crash. And because CrowdStrike says, hey, in order for Windows to run, we have to be running. So every time the machine rebooted, instead of booting into safe mode or booting safely on the second one, it just crashed again. So it was blue screen and blue screen and blue screen and blue screen. And we got some really good, terrible stories of like people were posting on Instagram all the blue screens that they saw in the world, and everywhere is Windows screens. It turns out, like airports and Times Square.
It's great viral marketing.
Look, the shot of Times Square with all the machines that were running Windows and they were all blue screening in different ways was fantastic. Now, the fix for this was horrible. Because it was blue screening before you could get into a management console type place, the only way you could fix these machines were going to the physical machine, booting it into safe mode, and deleting a file. Ooh. The affected update file. Which
I'm sure a lot of edge devices, you had an IT technician just driving around.
Well, so servers generally you could do that remotely, because a lot of servers have the remote management console stuff, and you could run a script that would do that. So it's less of an issue on servers. But bazillions of embedded devices, like all those screens in airports and bus terminals and Times Square, are all presumably running these machines that are little machines that are sitting behind all these things. And it's just it's like the Y2K thing, where you have to go and physically touch a bazillion machines. Ooh. That was because we didn't have a way to update stuff remotely. This happened because CrowdStrike messed up really bad and pushed out an update that prevented the machines from being updatable. Ooh. And like it seems like for a company whose software is designed to prevent downtime due to malware and ransomware and stuff like that, blue screening tens of millions of machines all at once seems like a kind of big mess up. That's the 5-minute version. There's some gross oversimplifications really there. I apologize.
Really good. Well done, Will. Well done.
All right, let's move on. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
So wait, but this isn't a piece of software that a normal consumer would run.
It's generally corporate antivirus, corporate security. Yeah. And like the whole point of running it is so you don't have the Obi-Wan Kenobi and the Millennium Falcon saying a million computers cried out all at once moment, which they then caused. So whoops, I guess.
Whoops. Okay.
Whoops.
But no one here got affected by anything.
No.
But the biggest thing I think we all said we heard people were for flights. Except for Southwest, they're like, "Hey, we didn't get affected.
We're on Windows 3.1."
Those memes were the best. The Battlestar Galactica memes about Southwest.
Remember when our old systems crashed a couple Christmases ago? That was our fault. This time, no. Actually, it's great that we have old systems.
No.
Oh, John Smith in the chat says about 8.5 million machines is the current estimate crash blue screen.
Yeah.
So shout outs to the IT people whose weekends were ruined because
those aren't just any 8.5 millions. Those are like business critical 8.5 million machines for the most part.
Yeah.
Like it's a massive headache. Microsoft actually just put out a USB yesterday, the day before, a USB tool to help streamline the process. You still have to go to every machine, but you can get this bootable drive in there. shove it in. It'll be a lot easier.
Yeah. So then you don't have to. Then you just have to reboot the machine. You don't have to physically mash F8 to try to get into.
Oh,
sync.
that's good. So you just plug
And
it
you don't
in,
have to go-
reboot. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That helps automate it some. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I have friends in who are on the corporate IT side of things, and they were doing a lot of discussion about this. Which, speaking to Mike Quinton's point in the chat about CrowdStrike being financially liable, they were actually bringing up portions of the terms of service, and I mean the lawyers are going to go after each other. I'm sure, like that's going to get sorted on that level. But according to the terms of service, they have language in there that says that the scope of their financial responsibility is basically, if I understand it correctly, it's like, we will refund you the amount that you pay to us for like a subscription. We will not cover your additional losses, because it would be ruinous, like it would just bankrupt them if they had to actually be financially responsible for something like this.
Well, that's standard
and
language,
it's pretty standard.
right?
Yeah, exactly. It's standard language in most contracts. So, for anyone who's in the chat or listening, wondering if they're going to have to take on I think the quote right now is like billions in lost revenue or whatever. Like, there's no way. Well, there's just no way they would have to assume that.
So, CrowdStrike will have errors and omissions insurance and like typical business insurance that should shoulder some basis of this. Now, their insurers are probably going to come after them and for because it doesn't cover like gross negligence and stuff like that. Like, I don't understand how this kind of an update goes out that reliably crashes machines. It's almost like they messed up and pushed it to live instead of staging or something like that, which we've talked about the blameless postmortem before. The fact that somebody, like, you shouldn't, in this type of critical infrastructure, you shouldn't be able to push something out that doesn't go through staging, right? Like, the processes should be in place that prevent you from making a mistake of this magnitude.
So, I want to ask you, how does that apply in this? Because frankly, if I worked in CrowdStrike, higher up, I would like to blame somebody. And if I were a CrowdStrike customer, I would like to blame somebody. How does that blameless philosophy work out here?
Well,
because
it's the philosophy is you find the idea is that you find the flaws in the system, right? So that the flaws in the system don't go forward. And if you're blaming people, then they're more likely to cover up the flaws in the system rather than expose the flaws in the system, which let you go forward.
So
now,
I guess
in this case, I think if I'm a CTO and I'm paying for CrowdStrike right now, I'm going to have some real serious questions about what their infrastructure and what their policies are like in place that allow a mistake of this magnitude that affects seemingly 100% of machines. We haven't seen the postmortem from them yet that describes actually what's happening. So, like, I would have some real questions about whether I'm going to continue giving CrowdStrike money and whether I might just go back to using Windows Defender or something that's a little more reliable for the services that they're providing. Because basically, what CrowdStrike is tarted up antivirus, right? It's not. They're not doing anything magic. It's just they just have made a different name for what we called antivirus 10 years ago because McAfee and Symantec and all the people that worked in that space kind of ruined the name.
I think that oversimplifies it a bit, though, because what do they call it? Like they call it like endpoint security type software.
Yeah.
Like they have more management tools built in for a corporate environment. It's not just your standard Defender. And I know Microsoft has their own kind of version of it, but I think the whole selling point for software like this is that basically your management console is just that much more sophisticated in how you can push and updates and manage users. So otherwise people will be subscribing to it so much, right? They would just use the free stuff or like the built-in stuff with the operating system.
Well, they're good at pushing updates. We know that.
Yeah, there you go.
Pushing, maybe not the updates though.
Yeah,
maybe the updates aren't great, but the pushing works terrific. Yeah, exactly.
Hey, we were just testing the
pushing works great. Apparently, that system's working great.
They're like, how many systems can we actually push to? All right, let's try it.
How many can we brick?
Yeah, let's try
it. Hey, I have a question though.
Don't know till you try.
Yeah, Gordon, what's up?
Because I was definitely I've seen a lot of X posts from Mac people and Linux people. Saying Nelson Munsing.
You're watching too many people on X then.
No, just because
you got to block all of them.
Yeah, don't use 10.
It just gets pushed. So, is it correct? Is this something that would not have affected Linux or Mac OS? Because that definitely a lot of Nelson Munsing, and for people to know, that's the classic ha ha. So I don't think that's necessarily true, though, right? So, they could have broken Linux or Mac OS easily. They just didn't push the update they didn't push the broken update to them, right?
I haven't verified this yet, but someone in chat did say that it affected Linux as well.
So I don't know that this one affected Linux, but they have affected Linux. CrowdStrike has definitely broken Linux in the past. Mac OS doesn't give kernel level access in the same way that Windows and that you can get in Linux, is my understanding. So this, I don't know what the status on CrowdStrike on Mac is, but I don't know. Do CrowdStrike? Do people who care about CrowdStrike stuff use Macs? Probably not. That doesn't seem like it.
But they're right though. Macs and Linux were not affected, and it's because
it just works.
Yeah.
Well, it also just wasn't pushed out. They didn't break them. And Davina points out nobody is pointing and laughing while systems are broken. You really underestimate the internet and the users on X.com.
Well, if you're not the one having to fix it, definitely there are going to be people pointing and laughing. If you're the one who's having to fix it, you're doing pointing, but you're not laughing.
Yeah. All right. Well,
Between this and all the oxidation stuff last week, I was catching up on stuff when I got back from the beach. I'm like, I picked a good week to have off.
Yeah, you missed Prime Day and you missed this stuff.
Oh yeah, the good and the bad. All right, anything else on this that we should cover? I mean, there's not really much for the average consumer to do about it. Hopefully, IT can handle it.
Well, I think we talked about this a little bit before the show, but I think the interesting question is that the EU has previously told Microsoft they have to give vendors access to the kernel, which is why this whole WCL certification process for kernel level drivers exists, and all this other, as because just to be clear, previously Microsoft used kernel access, tried to gate kernel access as a means to limit competition on their platform. Weirdly, I don't know
who would do that.
Yeah, it seems weird. I think that there's, in the modern security context, a lot of the software that is problematic, like anti-cheat and anti-piracy and antivirus, it's all this anti-stuff, has kernel level access. And I think that there's an argument for, hey, maybe everyone shouldn't have kernel level access, or maybe Microsoft needs to build APIs that give lower level access that minimize the impact when it goes bad. Because they are, on Linux, you can write your kernel patch for whatever you want and plug it in there, but that's on you. You're running an open source software. You're running an open source OS. You know presumably what you're doing. With Microsoft and Mac OS, there's real consequences to giving kernel level access to software, and it can be, hey, we crashed 8 million computers all at once, which is, it turns out, bad. But thanks to all the IT people who worked really hard this weekend, because that's a hard job.
Yikes.
So let me ask you the dark question here, because if this, obviously this is very high profile, and it feels like it gives ammunition to Microsoft and for OS vendors, for-profit OS vendors, to say, you know what, we just can't give everybody willy-nilly access to the kernel. We need to, in fact, frankly, security is better than freedom. Does this point to basically lock down iOS-style operating systems for everyone down the road? Because frankly, it's more secure. We can manage all of the security on our own. We don't need to give third-party access to the kernel. Doesn't it mean that's just simply the way it's better? For the future, should we just simply look forward to OSs that are so locked down that they are safer? You don't have to give all these third-party access to it. And what
I
does
would
that
be
mean
shocked
for-
if Microsoft didn't at least try that. At this point, I kind of feel bad for Microsoft because everyone kept calling it the Microsoft outage, and it was very much not the Microsoft outage. Yeah. But they do offer enterprise security solutions that compete with, CrowdStrike and stuff like that. And they have tried in the past to remove kernel access for most software. And it took the AV vendors freaking out over it to get Europe on their side to prevent that from happening. So I would actually be shocked if Microsoft didn't try to leverage this in some way to lock down the kernel to things like that. I don't know if it would be successful. Europe shut them down before. Already, I saw Matthew Prince, the CEO of Cloudflare, already on Twitter saying, hey, they're going to try to shut down the kernel access. Don't believe this. Don't let this happen. This would be a bad thing. So they're already out there stumping against it. But I'd be shocked if Microsoft didn't try to lock down because of this.
It wouldn't surprise me if we see a professional SKU that's actually a professional product that has lockdown kernel access, right? Like right now, the difference between Pro and Home is that they put like remote desktop and some other goofy things there and charge you more for it. I think having a enterprise. I mean, this would probably be the enterprise SKU realistically, but an enterprise SKU that is akin to what runs on ARM Windows, right? Where the kernel is locked down, and I think that's the interesting. I don't know. We'll see. It's going to be an interesting couple of months.
So is the moral of the story here is to switch to Mac?
Yeah, I mean, it's Gordon's choice for laptops, is my understanding.
No, iPads
Willis is choosing violence today.
The Mac still has
like, check out this hand grenade.
Yeah, 13-inch MacBook Air is the perfect laptop. Gordon said it a couple weeks ago. I remember. Yeah.
Macs still allow you to install third-party apps. Not go through the store. What I'm saying is total iOS style lockdown, no side loading, everything basically secure OS.
But there's an in-between. The Mac is the in-between, right? Because the Mac has no access to the kernel, but you can sideload other software.
For now, right? You know that Apple
they've already locked
like
down the kernel. They can't lock it down more.
No. He's saying for now you can sideload apps.
Oh, I mean they've tried to close the sideloading apps before, and people complained and they backed down, right?
Yeah, I know.
That's going to continue.
You basically wait for a good reason to convince all of your customers that, like, see, you know what? That's why if we go through the store, you have the vetted applications where you're getting them from. You're just simply not downloading it from that Google ad that they place so they can install malware when you search for your favorite utility, as we all run into all the time, right?
There
are valid reasons to close down sideloading of applications. I'm just playing devil's avocado here because I just like if it's that worth it to have a secure OS, then.
I mean, run on an iPad.
Yeah, I mean, the problem, the iPad is not the problem. The problem is the interface for the iPad.
Oh, agreed.
It's basically built for third graders, right? That's the problem with iOS, and that's my
man. Wow, Will the third grader here.
I was going to say though, Gordon, I think like Brad said, I think there would be an attempt, but given how they've had to walk back certain things with Windows 11's own attempts to just do things that we're not even talking about software, in terms of like locking down access. We're just talking about like adding more layers to the security stuff that wouldn't affect what you can install and uninstall. And they had to walk back that stuff. So I think because people are so used to having things a certain way, for them to reach that sort of position, it would be a very long route, or it would cause a lot of blowback. And they probably would end up walking some of it back anyway, just because of how it's gone already.
Well, I did do a poll for all the live people here asking if you worked in IT and if you did have to deal with this. And yeah, we have some people here in the chat who said they did have to deal with this. So that's crazy. Yeah.
Bless you.
Yeah.
Bless you.
Good job. Yeah.
We appreciate your sacrifice.
Hopefully you get a free lunch.
I did love looking at the big billboards with all the screens on them to see which screens are connected to the same computer, because you could see where they broke. That I love that. It was The Verge, I think, had a big long list of all the people posting pictures on socials.
That's funny.
That was good that they just kept adding to all weekend.
It's like a
that's pretty good journalism right there.
Yeah.
So I know people want to talk about the ROG Ally, but last devil's avocado question.
Put me on blast today too.
Because I mentioned this earlier in chat yesterday, I think, and it sort of brought up the internet worm of the stories from the 1980s. I doubt anybody sort of remembers internet worm at all, but one thing that really sort of helped prevent the internet worm from basically destroying the internet was diversity of systems. Because in the 1980s, there were very many different mini computers, mainframes, micros, everything. You had just so many things that were resistant to it. So basically, we had anything running Windows 11, which is basically 90% of the operating systems on the planet. And then in this case, we had CrowdStrike, which is the antivirus of choice for Fortune 500 companies and the governments around the world. So now, and that's what made it so high profile to break every single digital signage, like studios from Times Square to signage and airports to everywhere. And just you sort of saw how prevalent Windows 11 is and CrowdStrike is the argument then should we sort of swerve back to systems that offer diversity of operating systems and diversity of AV, because you just simply can't have one vendor break everything in the world, because this is what it felt like with CrowdStrike. It felt like it broke everything, although frankly for us poor home users, none of us ran it, but
it did feel like a cyber attack for a moment.
Yeah.
Like it had to be weird to be in a train station or in a airport and suddenly see all the screens blue screen like one after the other as the lights. It's like the last one turns the lights off. Yeah.
Right. It's like a movie, but
I mean, look, at the end of the day, 8.5 million systems seems like a lot, but it's nothing in the scale of all the computers in the world, right? Like if you want to see what happens when the solar coronal mass ejection comes and wipes out all integrated circuits on the planet, that's a whole different conversation we need to have.
No, we don't.
Cheerful podcast today.
Especially not on this
Cheerful
episode.
podcast today.
we all have our Faraday cages, don't we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Easy.
Gordon's in one right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Right behind me right now.
Oh, that's what that is behind you. I've always wondered what that was.
Yeah, the screen's there to hide it.
Yeah.
Elena's in her bunker.
Well lit bunker.
Yeah. Well, I'll get to take a new gaming handheld into my bunker.
Ooh.
Eh?
I got bad news for you about the chips that are in that thing.
Oh no. Yeah.
How is it?
So I have an ROG Ally X in my possession here.
Is it, just to be clear, is it an Ally X or is it an Ally 10?
Ally X.
Okay.
No,
Just
nobody
making
is
sure.
nobody has said 10
Okay.
to me.
The most important question is, did you sniff it?
I did sniff it. It actually smelled very fresh.
Oh my.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It didn't have any tinge to it.
Like that new car smell.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to hang it up in my rearview mirror. But it's not a bad sniff. Yeah,
I noticed it's black, but what else has changed?
that's about it.
Okay.
I'm just kidding. No. I mean, so
This is a short segment.
yeah, that was easy. Question time. So yeah, I mean, there's definitely changes. Like other than the processor and the screen, it's pretty much all brand new, redesigned. The inner shell, the outer shell, doubled battery capacity, but only like a small bump in weight. They really did do a lot to kind of redo this. Also, an increase in price. I was listening to some of my favorite people on a podcast talk about their reviews of this, and for them, you know, they're kind of seeing this kind of the same way I am. Is that this is the premium option. You know, we were talking about the Ionia Kun. Like for me, like when that came out, that was supposed to be like the premium, most high-end option you can get for a handheld gaming device. I actually wasn't like super impressed with it myself, but I think what the Asus wanted to come out with was that, hey, you know what? We have two versions of the Ally. The non-extreme one and then the extreme one. Those are usually, you can get a pretty good sale on them sometimes too. This is for the ultra stupid nerds like me who, you know, want the premium device and are willing to pony up for it. So, you know, I don't know. I've seen a lot of people be like, is it worth it? Is it a good deal? And I don't know. I don't really care, but I also don't. I don't think this is like a deal kind of device. Like some people are like, oh, you could buy 2 Steam Decks for this, and it's like, yeah, okay. I mean, you could but this is more like, this is a 14,900K. You know, you're not buying it because you need it. You're buying it because you can.
Because you want something to crash after about 6 months and get really unreliable.
I shouldn't have used that analogy.
I guess my question is looking at this because it is the same screen and the same underlying chip, right?
Yes.
So everything else that was redone. So that's to improve the quality of life all around.
And performance. Actually, it does increase performance. Yeah.
Did you get enough lift in quality of life to feel like it's worth spending the extra money? Not necessarily isn't worth it by itself. Is the quality of life improvements? Does it?
Oh yeah, does it justify coming out at a higher price point? I believe so. Yeah, there.
How much is this versus the?
This is
standard?
800.
And the standard Ally's 5?
No, 700. Well, it came out at 700. I think it's now officially 650.
Okay.
For the I can't remember the exact SKUs, and like I said, you can get some good deals on them sometimes. Yeah. But yeah, I mean it is crazy. Like the biggest thing for me, which and people who know me, people know I don't care too much about battery life on these because my main use case is to play it on the couch and just have it plugged in the whole time. Like that's what I care about. But I have intentionally been playing it unplugged, and I've done plenty of playing unplugged as well. But every time I would get that anxiety. I would be playing for a while, and then I get that anxiety and be like, oh yeah, you know what? It's probably like at 15%. I probably need to update this, and then I bring in the overlay and I look and it's like 55%, and I'm like, oh.
So
oh, okay, wow, actually they literally doubled the battery capacity in here. And so some of it's brute force, but some of it they have talked about optimization improvements, like I guess the fans actually use lower wattage overall.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean it's definitely they've really thought about it and kind of like added a lot of good stuff into it. So I definitely do appreciate what it's bringing to the table. Is it enough to go over normal Ally? I would say the biggest thing would be the battery life. If you're looking at buying an Ally and you're like, man, I'm still iffy about the battery life kind of stuff, this kind of squashes.
You could just buy an Ally and a big 12,000 kilowatt milliamp hour battery, or
just sit next to an outlet.
Sit next to an outlet.
But I mean, yeah. So ergonomics, there's plenty to talk about. I do want to say before we get too far. So I have had this in for I can't remember exactly when it came in. I think it was actually last Tuesday. I do not have an official review of it because I actually have a problem with this device. Immediately when we powered it on, the screen was just flickering like rapidly, and it wasn't like black. Like it wasn't screen on, screen off. It was more like brightness levels of adjustment. So I kind of ate a number of days just trying to troubleshoot it on myself. And then I reached out to Asus and was like, hey, I've got some problems. Do you have some, recommendations on how to fix this? They didn't know. So they're going to send a new device. So and it's been intermittent. Like the actual screen doesn't always flicker, and if I'm running it at like 0 or 100%, then it doesn't flicker either. So it's really weird. I'm not quite sure.
Have you heard from anyone else that has the same issue?
I have not seen anybody else report this issue, so I don't know.
That was my question as well.
Yeah. I mean, maybe if somebody has, please let me know. But yeah, I was waiting for other people to drop that, but no. So they're going to send me a new unit. I have been doing some eGPU testing, so I do actually have a video, hopefully coming soon of that. But which usually you have the screen off, so it doesn't really matter either. So yeah, that's why I don't have a review out now. But I mean, also. Like everyone, I watched everyone else's videos, like Retro Game Core and our friend Carrie over at the Fox, so everyone's got good stuff to talk about it for the most part. Some people are iffy on ergonomics and specific things, but yeah, I don't think it really necessarily adds anything to the handheld equation in terms of like what should you buy, because that first decision tree is still, hey, do you want a Steam Deck? Yes or no? Yeah. Like for the most part, I still would recommend a Steam Deck. But if you're like, you know what, I'm comfortable going Windows. Okay, cool. Well, do you want something that's a little cheaper, or do you actually want like the a flagship level kind of device? And that's where I would point this at.
You should make that tree chart.
It's easy. Yeah. Decision tree. Should you buy a Steam Deck? Yes or no?
Yeah.
So this is Windows 10 or 11, right?
Windows 11. Yep.
Are you able to play? I'm just wondering. Are you able to play games that you can't play on the Steam Deck? Because I think that's one thing. You pointed out is there are games that simply will not run on Steam Deck, right?
Yeah, it's just like Fortnite has a version of Easy Anti-Cheat that it's incompatible with Linux. Which is an Epic choice rather than there are Linux versions of Easy Anti-Cheat.
But so can you run Fortnite on that device?
It's just Windows. This is just, think of it as a laptop with built-in handles.
I know, but is it friendly towards controllers and the lack of a keyboard kind of?
No, that's usually where people get hung up on, is like navigating the Windows-ness of it. And there is an overlay launcher that actually just got a big 1.5 update, I think, for their Armory Crate SE, which brings some good quality improvements. But you still need to go into Windows. You still need when you power on the device, you have to configure it like Windows, which I'm okay with. Like, is it perfect? No. Is it as easy as a Steam Deck? No. But like, does it bug me? No, because what I get out of it is worth doing that. So that's me personally. Yeah.
Yeah,
and it's Thunderbolt, right? It's not.
Yes, USB 4. Yeah, so that was one of that's the testing I'm doing right now, is because they took away the proprietary XG mobile plug. I can't remember if the plug itself had a name.
But it's like a weird. It looks like an old laptop dock connector almost.
Yeah, and then so they were like, okay, well, we took that off and we added a second USB port, and they do clearly indicate, hey, which one should you plug in for charging, which one should you plug in for the full bandwidth. So I do have some testing around that. TLDR, I'm not super happy. I mean, like if you're trying to do with an eGPU, like I understand a lot of people didn't like the XG mobile route because it was expensive and could get quite loud.
Probably
as
limited
well
to that machine for all time now, given that they've ditched the port also.
No, they have it on laptops as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there are some with it on laptops, so it's not or in tablets, right? Didn't they have a tablet? That
Yes, a tablet, tablet or whatever it's called.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's a trade-off because I have an eGPU, a Thunderbolt-based eGPU that I'm using, but the experience is not great on it either. So your mileage varies because eGPU's mileages varies anyway.
But yeah, I was going to say also you're talking about a niche of a niche of a niche when you're talking about eGPUs on handhelds.
But I mean, if you're talking about like having more functionality to put it on a dock and have more ports and stuff like that, or having an external, maybe you have your games loaded off an external drive or something. Like I think most people want that second port for sure. So I'm a weirdo.
If nothing else, you can plug in a mouse and keyboard at the same time too, right? Without having to use a hub or something or a dock.
Yeah. So
how far? So in chat, Zoe's asking, how far have you tinkered with the Ally X? Have you tried undervolting as well?
No. Like I said, unfortunately, a lot of my time was spent trying to troubleshoot the screen, and we were actually going to tear it open. You think it might be a hardware thing?
It sounds like there's a loose wire if it's intermittent and it's just the brightness.
Yeah. So I need to check that out. So no, I intentionally was like just trying to get the usability part of it out of it. So even though it was annoying to have the screen flicker for a lot of my gaming sessions, I was like, okay, well, at least I can get understanding for the performance. It didn't seem to affect the performance, the actual like ergonomics of it, the battery life, how loud it was, the smell of the fans, all of that stuff I was kind of focusing on before like getting into heavy like tinkering. I also wanted to load Bazite on a drive and kind of use it in that fashion. So yeah, lots more to do with it.
I was going to say the thing to me is that the increased battery solves kind of my big complaint with the Ally. Like the Windows thing is running Windows is a choice, right? You're going to have like weird desktop UI and a kind of iffy vendor provided like shell replacement for that's gamepad compatible, and you're gonna have to update it like 4 different things when you want to do a system update. But you're gonna be able to run Fortnite and you're gonna be able to run Call of Duty and games that don't run particularly well under Linux. The battery was the big knock for me on the Ally, because the Windows thing is a choice, but the battery life was demonstrably worse than on the Steam Deck for the first Ally, and them like taking what they learned from building that first one and finding enough internal space to double the size of the battery is dope, because that was like it was a big limitation. Yeah.
Well, and so the Fox did a ton of if you want somebody to look really at efficiency and like battery life and all that like hardcore testing, the Fox does amazing stuff over on YouTube. So it's spelled THEF. No, PHAWX, the Fox. So by his testing, and others I've seen as well back this up, at lower wattages, the Steam Deck does have a little bit of advantage. So if you're playing like a really light indie game, like an example, like a Fan the Deck was like, hey, playing Balatro, I was getting 7 hours instead of 6 hours.
Yeah.
But at higher wattage games and you know, like more graphically intensive games, it's actually pretty damn close. Like I think you're still eking out more with the amazing efficiency, especially on the OLED version of the deck, I should say, compared to the LCD one. But yeah, instead of being like, you know what, you're going to get half the battery life, now you're like, you're actually going to get pretty close.
Like the numbers are great, but from a human usability standpoint, once you get much beyond 4 hours, I think you're probably not. Like I'm not going to
test me.
I'm not ever going to sit there for more than 4 hours with one of these handhelds in my hand, or else I won't be able to, my hands will be formed into a claw for the next week.
Oh no, the claw's a different device.
Oh yeah, sorry.
That's not the claw.
So yeah, like I like part of it is, once again, the larger battery life. They literally went from like, I think 40 watt hour to 80 watt hour, and then they had to, you know, find other efficiencies in there to kind of get even better off top of that. Yeah. So I do hope other devices will start seeing bigger watt hour batteries. I know the Claw, the AI 8 or 7. What is the new one? 8. I think it's the 8.
8.
Yeah.
8
yeah.
plus.
No, 8 the
plus.
Claw AI 8 plus.
8 plus AI. There's the AI in there.
Yeah, there's AI in there somewhere. It's whatever. That one also has it's either a 70 or 80 watt hour battery in that one as well, but that's going to be a larger device. This is still a 7-inch screen, so
that's to me the most impressive part of this. Like Will was saying, like they're able to, like looking at laptops and stuff. I'm used to laptops. I'm not used to handhelds. Going from 40 to 80, like that takes a lot of space in that little device. For them to not add much weight and still keep it that small, like that's damn impressive engineering.
I can't remember how many grams, but I mean it's definitely a big deal. It's weird because if you just weigh it, or the actual like grams that it's off is not much, but it definitely feels heavier in the hand though.
The balance is it's weighted in the way it feels like the right.
If it feels solid,
compared to the old one felt kind of flimsy.
It's really hard to describe because like I realized this with the Kun versus the Legion Go, which weighed about the same, but the Legion Go felt way worse because all the weight was centered on the screen part rather than the handles.
Feels like it's heavy down in the grippy parts of the handles in a way that's good.
So they definitely, you know, distributed it in a different way. So me personally, I would still say the original Ally felt more comfortable to hold for longer periods of time, even without the larger grips. But this, I think it distributes it pretty evenly and then adds the grips. So it's, you know,
I think the Coffee asked about battery life while streaming, which typically on the Steam Deck is like 4x something ridiculous. It's like you can go all day.
At that point, it's mostly the screen, you know, and then internal stuff. Which, like I said, they literally reworked every part of this to try to maximize battery life and stuff like that. So, so they also did switch to a 2280 drive rather than the 2230. Which is awesome because that's a lot cheaper to get a standard 2280 M.2. Unfortunately, though, they didn't keep the holes for a 2230 or 2242 if, number one, you already invested in one.
Oh, that sucks.
Or two, if you're like, hey, you know what, for some reason I still, you know, or I had one laying around, I'm not quite sure. I'm a little bummed out by that.
Which Wi-Fi spec is it on this one?
Wi-Fi 7.
Same.
Yeah. So... 6E. I can't remember. But so it's cool. I like it.
That is the first one. I haven't played with the original Ally either. But from everything you're saying about it, a lot of the qualms I had about the original Ally sound similar to Will. And this is the first Steam Deck competitor that I would seriously consider buying personally.
Honestly, I'm really interested to put Beside on it and see what this hardware feels like with Linux running.
Yeah, so Fan the Deck actually did that at launch. Okay. Has a video on that. I haven't watched it yet. I do want to watch it. They had to work with
was it the controllers?
Yeah, there was the mapping wasn't right out of the box. There were actually a couple drivers they had to figure out. So it's not like, oh, you can get Bazite immediately working on that quite yet, but I'm sure it's coming.
Month or two.
Yeah, I'm sure it's coming.
The Ally X has some weird control. I mean, the original Ally has some weird controller stuff too because they handle controllers in an atypical way, is my understanding.
Yeah. So my decision tree, if I were to make it, it'd be like, do you want a Steam Deck? Yes or no?
Yeah.
I think most people are going to pick Steam Deck. So yeah. Okay. If no, then the next thing would be like, okay, well, what's your budget? And then I would say at this point, like the first recommendation for me would be the original Ally or the Ally X, because they're keeping the original Ally around as well. Like it's kind of serving two different markets.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
It's hard to beat the price on the Steam Deck though. If you just want an entry point and you already have it,
Yeah.
especially if you already have a gaming PC, it's hard to beat the Steam
And a
Deck.
Steam
If this
library,
is your
and a
primary
healthy Steam
spending,
library, yeah.
spending more money kind of makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, either way, this is a luxury item. Like, I don't know I wonder how many people would have these and so like, oh, should I buy a console at $500 or should I buy a handheld? I'm not quite sure. I still feel like most people like, oh no, they've got a gaming PC or a console and they're buying this as well.
I think I'd buy this in a dock before I'd buy a gaming laptop though, for the most part.
Oh,
at this point.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't game on laptops, so.
No, I know, but like, there's a lot of people like the conversation you have with parents, and I'm sure Gordon and Brad probably have had this, is, hey, my kid wants a gaming PC, but I don't have room in my house for a big giant desktop.
Yeah,
Should I just get him the gaming laptop at Best Buy for $1,000? Looks pretty good, and I would absolutely have him get this and a monitor and a dock over that.
Good question. Yeah.
That's actually something I'm thinking of right now because my kid needs a new PC. She has an old GTX 1060 laptop.
Yeah.
So like 7th gen Intel, I think. And it's really starting to chug. So we were looking at gaming laptops because she wants something portable, go between houses. And I'm like, I'm really thinking about getting either an Ally or a Steam Deck. I was thinking more of the Ally for the Windows version. And just getting the dock and plugging that in. And that'd probably be perfect for everything that she needs, including cutting YouTube videos and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, and with like the full-size slot, it's much cheaper to get a big giant SSD to put in there and the whole thing.
Yeah.
Like it's really interesting for that kid computer, I think.
Yeah.
I'm going to disagree. I would say.
I'm surprised.
No, I would honestly say, just because I've gone through it already several times, the kids all want desktop machines. They all want desktop machines with Windows and RGB.
Your kids are older than our kids too.
No, but I mean that. But you basically buy once because they will get there, and I don't think. I would think that a handheld is not going to really last as long.
That's true.
So, frankly, for Brad's application, I would say, I know this is going to drive people nuts, but small form factor with the portable monitor.
Yeah,
you can get a lot of upgradability. You can get a lot of performance. It's actually fairly portable, and you could probably even find a bag you can put it in. But
get a handle.
Wait, man, he's advocating for small form factor. I was just allowing him to say that. Wow. Yeah, just like continue to tell me how awesome
with
small
a bag
form factor
though.
is.
That's important.
Yeah.
The bag is an important part of this.
Why don't people understand this? But it really comes down to what's right for me versus what's right for somebody else. Like I like desktops. So I would always say desktop, but if somebody's going to talk to me and they say like, yeah, I'm a soldier and I live out of my Foot Locker, you're going to want a laptop, right? For most of the people. So
yeah,
what kind of person is going to say, no, go out and get a, great big giant gaming desktop? That's just, come on.
I will say, I'm testing the eGPU right now for gaming, but for content creation stuff, which is what a lot of people use eGPUs for. I should maybe throw a test on there for that as well. But I kind of like partially thought about switching to this as my main system or the original Ally.
Oh, I think you should do that.
Yeah, I don't know. I get maybe for science. Yeah, maybe I should for science. But yeah, we had somebody in the chat say they docked their original Ally for what was it, like 2 months? I think is what they said. A friend of the show, Deatus, said I used my Ally in dock mode for nearly 2 months just to see how it was as a single solution. Yeah,
I'm sure at the end they went back to their normal solution, though, right? It's just kind of like I just don't really see that as. I mean, I'm a huge fan of micro laptops. I love micro laptops for when they were around.
I mean, we've had two people on this show who primarily use a handheld as their main work system. So,
I mean,
but they're also weirdos like me. So
it's just interesting. I love that it's a possibility. Yeah.
For the average consumers, how big of a decision is when buying a handheld for the operating system. Like Brad, you're gonna buy handheld for your kid. You want the Linux OS or Windows OS?
I mean, I think that's the biggest decision.
I do too.
Yeah.
That's the biggest decision for me. It'll probably come down to the Ally because she's interested in expanding her YouTube channel chops, and I feel like that's a little easier on Windows than it is on Linux.
DaVinci Resolve does work on Linux, so they do have a Linux version.
But yeah, to me, that's all of it. To me, it depends on what you want out of it. Like, because I agree with Adam that this is like a secondary PC for a lot of people. Like, this is your on the go. This is your Switch if you're a PC gamer. And if you're looking for like a Switch-like console experience, yes, there's a lot of rough edges, but I feel like the Steam Deck gives that better to you. Like if I was giving like my nephew, like, hey, my nephew wants a gaming handheld, I just hit the lottery, so I'm gonna get my nephew a gaming handheld.
What a nice guy!
Wow, yeah.
Because I'd give him the Steam Deck because going through Windows is jump through a lot of hoops. Whereas if you're a hardcore PC nerd who already has the massive Steam backlog and knows what you want and everything,
and knows how to configure Windows, and willing to watch YouTube videos of ultimate configurations.
Davina in the chat did say Ally X for homework. Yeah,
there you go. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the thing that you said is key, though, right? It's the same reason I have an iPad instead of a laptop, right? Is I use the laptop occasionally, and I don't want to be the first thing I turn on is to get 50 updates for the thing and have it be not working for 2 hours when I need it. It's the same thing for the Steam Deck. The Steam Deck, you just open it up and you turn it on, it kind of works.
There's still
Ally
updates.
X, you got the 6 different places to do the updates. And
I mean, there's still updates on the Steam Deck.
But if you use it every day, you don't feel that pain.
Yeah.
And if you're using it occasionally, you will. So I think for me, that's one of the things that you have to think about.
Yeah.
I think it's deliciously ironic that in the year 2024, Linux is the system that just works on the PC. It's Windows that causes headaches on these.
It's 2025 year Linux.
Yeah, I've heard 2025 a year Linux. So
Microsoft's going to kill all those
we're all
old
gonna get on
Windows
that.
Windows 10 machines.
Yep. All right. So yeah, it's a good machine. I can, even with the screen problem, the rest of it is a good machine.
Nice.
So yeah. No, let's move over to questions. We've got a little more time. But we should be getting out of here pretty soon. So if you have a burning question right now, put it in the chat at not PCWorld, at the Full Nerd Podcast.
We moved at
I know.
Yeah, it's a new channel. We're over at the Full Nerd now.
Wait, when did this happen? Then hopefully we'll get to it. Or if you're watching or listening to this later, there's a link to the Discord in the description where you can throw a question in there. We got some really good questions in here. We're going to go back to the Intel thing, mostly running at stockish. A friend of the show asked, no one asked Gordon the most important question: is Intel screwed, Gordon? I know you usually save that for your series with Steve, but maybe it's a little hint on what you think. Is Intel screwed right now?
No, and no, obviously not, because it sucks. Everybody's angry. I mean, nobody's satisfied with this. Nobody's happy. Yes, it does look like at least there may be a light at the end of the tunnel, but for the most part, this again does not change Intel's fortunes, because you remember, if this is mostly confined to KF SKUs, then that's a very, very small amount of CPUs, especially desktop parts. So it's not going to make that much a difference in the world. And the average consumer, if you ask them, is 20 times more aware of the CrowdStrike fiasco than the Intel ongoing 7 or 8 month problem that Intel's been having with its 13th, 14th gen parts. So no, it is not. It is not the end. But yes, certainly there are a lot of really, really pissed off Intel customers at this point.
What if the Wendell stuff about it hitting data centers too is affected? Does that change your answer?
What do you mean as far as
they haven't come out and said Xeon?
No, they just said
they've addressed desktop, they've addressed laptop, they have not addressed Xeon, right?
Well, if I parse the Wendell data right, it was mostly using consumer grade i9s in data center to run game servers for high single thread performance in game servers. So I don't think it really. I have not heard reports of this affecting Xeons, because Xeons are pretty much, about as boring as you can get, right? So I don't think it does not. I mean, they're boring by design, right? That's what they do, right? They they're
Nobody wants an exciting server processor. You want the boring one.
yeah, no, it's not the end. It is certainly not the end. Remember, you got a nice big government check going to Intel all the time from the United States government. So no, I don't think it makes that much of a difference. But yes, I definitely want to save this for a video with Steve because this is something long overdue now. But at the same time, no. People are always think like this one incident is going to end a company that is 40 plus years old with tens of billions of dollars and fabs around the world. It's just pretty ridiculous. But yes, it is a massive black eye, especially for a very important audience, which is, people who are your evangelists, people who buy 14900K parts that are out there. They are gamers. They are spending the most amount of money out there. They're not happy. At the same time, we're going to see how, Intel handles it, because clearly if they're going to say, hey, you know what, you paid whatever, $600 for your chip, here's $600. Okay, that's pretty good, right? I've been using this damn thing for 12 months now, and you're going to give me the full retail value of it? That is not bad service.
Yep.
That is not what you're going to get out of, hey, you know what, I've got my recalled X-made car, and you go out and you're like, oh yeah, this thing is a lemon. Okay, we're going to give you 40% the value. I was like, what? I cannot go buy this car again. If they're actually going to really give you full retail value for what you paid for it, that's going to make it right by customers. So that's going to come down to it. And I will point this out in the past, because it should be said, Intel in the past has put its money where its mouth is, and they've made it right by consumers in the past. So we don't know if that's going to happen here. It looks like it may, but we'll get there when we get there.
We'll see. All speculation. A couple of quick monitor questions from friend of the show, Pyrocumulus. Now that OLED has come to 16:9 monitors and even ultra-wide, can we expect to see higher resolution ultra-wide OLEDs like 5120 by 2160 or 7680 by 2160?
I think you mean 76 by 21.
Oh,
right?
you're right. 51 by 21 and 76 by 21.
Yeah.
Those are some big numbers. Brad?
They mean nothing.
Yeah.
What does that even mean?
I wouldn't expect them anytime soon. They still go for kind of mass market with these things. Like a lot of these, like we're starting to see a whole bunch of the OLED ultra wide panels. It's because they all use the same LG or Samsung panel, and they go for those sweet spots. And I think those ultra huge ultra wides are not sweet spot yet. So I wouldn't expect that, at least for a few years.
I mean, there's not a lot of hardware that can drive that many pixels too.
No. But on the flip side, those high-end ultra-wide OLED monitors are the monitors that you can get like $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 for. So if there's a way a company can figure out a way to make it work, I'm sure they will, because there definitely are some monitor nerds out there. Yeah. But I just think there's not enough interest for the panel makers to invest in that right.
I guess the real question is when can we expect to see that? Do you think we're 1 year off, 2 years off, 5 years off?
I think we're at least 2 to 3 years away. I wouldn't be surprised if it's longer, but things move fast in tech.
Yeah, I saw G9, the Samsung G9, that big ultra wide, the 50-inch ultra wide, was on sale the other day during Amazon's big deal. Ooh. And it was like, oh man, it's 50% off. I looked at the price, $1,200, $1,100. I'm probably good.
Got him. All right. Follow up to that. Is the dream of micro LED dead or just on pause for monitors?
I've actually I've heard from several people inside the monitor industry that they think micro LED might even be the future. Actually,
I've actually heard that as well.
To OLED. So I think right now we're in the OLED like renaissance, but in the future I wouldn't be surprised if we see more micro LED.
It seems like we're where OLED was. Like we're just getting to the point where we're going to start seeing micro LEDs in like the premium price points and not the ultra premium price points. Maybe even next year, the year after. Like it's just this stuff just takes a long time.
Yeah, and it's pricey. Yeah. It takes a long time and it's pricey. But like I don't do the majority of our monitor coverage, but longtime listeners to the show might know that I'm a big monitor nerd myself. So whenever I meet up with people at shows, I'm like, hey, man, so what do you think? We're starting to see a lot of OLEDs, blah, blah, blah. And unanimously, when I was at CES this year, I asked four different companies those kinds of things. What are you feeling about, the future of the monitor market? And they all liked mini LED, not OLED. They said it'll be a mix, but mini LED is not dead.
Do you think it'll be the same path that we saw with OLED, where we start out with like $3,000 sets that are micro LED, and then over the next 5 years that filters down until you're seeing $1,000 sets and $800 sets?
Yeah, I think that's exactly what's going to happen. The people I were talking to were targeting in the future higher end monitors to include this in to start.
Makes sense.
I have to be very careful about how I talk there because I forget exactly who I was talking to.
A friend of the show, Intel Cope Truth, they changed their name recently, asked over on Discord, what do you think the secret sauce, what do you think is the secret sauce that the Radeon team is missing? Better department lead, software lead, funding, manpower, more time to cook, or all the above?
I don't know, man. I haven't worked for AMD. Like you can never really speculate if you're outside of a company, I feel. Just as someone who has job hopped quite a bit, like you can look at stuff from the outside. You don't really know what's going on inside there. I think in the past, the answer clearly would have been software. I think that they have brought their software up to par the last few years, both on the CPU and the GPU side. I think they're investing in a lot more potent hardware. Like I think their ray tracing is better than a lot of companies give them credit for. Actually, I think Radeon 7000 is pretty good. I think honestly, it's just an issue of scale. Intel and NVIDIA are so much bigger, and like NVIDIA in particular focuses entirely on GPUs. They're not. I mean, like they have Grace Hopper and stuff like that for the data center, but in the consumer side of stuff, like all their wafers are going to GPUs, whereas AMD has to take its wafer allocation and slice them up.
Well, and we were talking about this in Discord too, and I think that's what led to them putting this question in here. But the part of it is also NVIDIA, like Intel had become complacent on CPUs for a while, so it gave AMD an opening, right? And luckily they had a good opening, a good technology to be there at the right time. NVIDIA does not stop. NVIDIA is relentless in their pursuit of pushing things and not really giving AMD an easy in. I mean, there's the pricing stuff, obviously, that people like to point out, but even somebody in the chat says, or a friend of the show, Datus, says just more aggressive pricing approach. They're asking too much, but I still don't even think it's that.
Having come from the game development side and as somebody who worked at a small indie game dev, the difference in DevRel approach from Intel and AMD and NVIDIA was noticeable. Like Intel and AMD were both like, they were responsive and helpful, but it was like, hey, send us your logs, send us your dumps, we'll get back to you in a week or two. And when you said, hey, we have a problem to NVIDIA, they'd say, okay, we'll run a test suite on our thing in Moscow or wherever.
You mean AMD?
No, NVIDIA.
Oh, NVIDIA. Oh,
yeah.
Sorry.
When you said, hey, we have a problem with your driver with NVIDIA, they would run the test suite across a bazillion machines in Moscow, and the next morning you'd have a full like 50-page report that's like, hey, here's the places we saw problems on this level at this time on this run through, and like you didn't get that from Intel and AMD on the driver or the CPU on the graphics or the CPU side from either of them. So.
That's insanely impressive. As someone who hasn't worked in game development, to have them offer that to a small indie game developer next day, 50-page report, like that's insanely impressive.
Well, it was all like generated. It wasn't like somebody was writing it, but it was in like when we had a driver debug problem, it took all of the grunt work that would have taken us weeks to do and gave us the stuff we needed to actually fix the problem really quickly, which like it's why their drivers are like, I used to think before I worked in the space, I thought that they were doing some weird shenanigans to make everybody else's drivers bad. No, it's just that when you have a problem with their stuff, they give you the stuff you need to fix it. And the other vendors don't have that same level of commitment.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, Dadu says Ryzen was an amazing first gen. They just priced them too good to ignore. They priced them really good, but they also gave you double the cores. So like, it's right. In certain workloads, you could still, you could get more. I think that's the thing here is that like AMD, they can't come out and like double GPU performance compared to NVIDIA.
Yeah, I mean, the CPU battles are very different because there are a lot of things that impacted Intel being stuck, all that. But I mean, when you're looking at NVIDIA, it's just this monster, right? They never stop. They never take their eye off the ball, and they're hyper aggressive with every single thing. we've seen this demonstrated for decades now. So I think maybe it's unfair to sort of blame AMD because it's sort of like, why can't RC Cola beat Coca-Cola? It's like, well, because it's Coca-Cola. What are you going to do, right? Like 10,000 times your resources and ads and stars and all this stuff, and like the entire world drinks Coca-Cola. So can you really blame RC Cola for? So
don't talk. They'll send the polar bears to your house and mess you up.
I don't think it's. I think it's a little unfair to sort of blame them for missing any magic. I think it's just simply the stars that are just like they have to take their wins where they can get them, and frankly, you got to give AMD credit, Radeon team, because they have succeeded really well for considering where they are because they've been fighting NVIDIA for decades now, and
they have good GPUs
do as well. Yeah. They have good GPUs. They give you really good value performance for the money, but it is really, really hard to overcome mindshare. So again, that's a tough battle. So I think people, it's a little mean to sort of say you're screwing up. Where like, come on, you know what? You're not gonna suddenly beat the Celtics for the amount of championships they have. Well, it's just that's going to take.
And
forever.
AMD's fighting a two-front war, right? Like they're fighting Intel on one side and NVIDIA on the other. That's hard.
Yeah. And I forgot to tell you. So Gordon, when you had been to Computex last, we were working on a story about the finding Radeons in Taipei because we noticed when we were walking around all of the electronics markets, it was like you're talking about 98% NVIDIA GPUs. Like you go you go into to buy a GPU and you're like, okay, which NVIDIA do I want? And if you're like, oh, where are the Radeons? And it was like, oh, well, we've got them in. It was always high up,
very top corner.
Yeah, in the top corner, they would have maybe a couple Radeons, and then maybe sometimes an Intel GPU too. I forgot to tell you this year I was looking around too. I didn't get video evidence or photos. I should have sent you stuff, but even I would say even less.
Really?
Radeon, yeah. And a lot of people were, because Gordon was going around asking almost every single person who was selling them, and they're like, why is Radeon not that big of a deal? What, they would say something like, yeah, it's so weird that all these American YouTubers are always telling people to go buy Radeons because nobody buys Radeons here.
Yeah, no, it comes down to the branding because we never unfortunately finished that video, but you just could not find Radeon. It was just and there'd be one or two cards stuffed in a little corner, but I felt it was a 98% green, right?
Yeah.
And actually, so right after that, I'd gone to Japan and I went through their electronics district, and the retailers there, actually, the presence of Radeon was quite a bit higher. So I actually have video of going down, they'd have an entire aisle of Radeons.
Oh.
Yeah, but even then, talking to the vendors there, they're like, we have a lot of Radeons, but still same thing. They for the most part, and it just speaks to NVIDIA's branding power, is most people in Japan still bought NVIDIA. You could find Radeons, but for the most part, the retailers were telling me that, very few people buy Radeons, and they had a lot of different reasons for that. Maybe it's, they basically wanted better prices on them. They actually said that Radeon was not price competitive in Japan versus NVIDIA. That's maybe speaks to some of the business practices, but in Taipei was a 98% green town. I mean, we went to 10, 12, 13 different vendors?
More than that.
Yeah.
Because there's all the little people in the corners and stuff.
Yeah, and I talked to customers why do you want NVIDIA and why? And the people, they were like, yeah, because people here, they just don't. Again, it's exactly the same. You'll see this here where everybody here talks really good about in Radeon. Everybody recommends them, but, again, for your kid, you're going to go out and they're going to buy a brand new machine. They want NVIDIA because that's what their YouTubers run. They see green everywhere, and it's really, really hard to break through branding. And bringing up the last thing, my point is bringing up, Ryzen versus Core. It took, even though AMD was giving you twice the amount of cores that Intel was willing to give you,
and cheaper,
Intel was still solidly outselling them, right? 90%, right? And it took 2000 series, 3000 series, and then finally things started to break through. 5000 series really changed things, and that was still mostly on desktops, which again is a very, very small amount of the market versus mobile. Whereas it has taken years and years of AMD offering really efficient, really good mobile CPUs, and still, honestly, Qualcomm probably had a bigger splash than AMD has on mobile. So it is a really hard battle to fight against, these giants. And it's branding. It's like, I swear to God, like nobody goes out and they ask for an RC Cola, right?
I do Pepsi. Sometimes just to be like, hey, what does that taste like?
You just want to feel something?
Yeah, just see what it tastes like.
It just tells you. You got your jingle out there. You get your soda jingle. You got everybody goes out and they buy their brand, and that's just simply the way humans are programmed.
Hey, here, I'll tell you what you need to buy. I tried it the other day. They have a Dr. Pepper Zero with coconut flavoring in it now. Oh, that's amazing. Go try that out.
I like the Dr. Pepper strawberries and cream. That's that one.
Yeah.
There's
a
really good video I like. There's a really good YouTuber, RDC World, but they have like off-brand drinks. Like when you go to these places, like the restaurants, like
Faygo?
Dr. Thunder. Nobody wants Dr. Thunder. What's
Faygo's
Dr.
not
Thunder?
off-brand drink, Adam. ICP's going to come get you now.
I'm sorry, all the hatchet men are at my door.
Yeah, so RDC World off-brand drinks is the way.
Okay.
I love when you used to go to the grocery store and they have their own bootleg version of. Is that what we're
That's
talking
what he's
about
talking
here?
about. Yeah.
Like you
Dr.
go to
Thunder.
Winn-Dixie and they have
some of those were not bad. Yeah, some of those were not
Sprite.
bad. They were cheaper too. Yeah, Sprint, not Sprite.
Yeah, they rebranded Sprite, didn't they? What's the one that they recently?
Sprite's still Sprite.
Oh no! You're talking about
the other one,
the Starry. Yeah,
Yeah,
no.
Starry.
Oh, but that's they're trying to. What was it? They've Pepsi's
Sprite
been
knockoff.
Yeah, they've been trying to hit.
No.
They've been trying to get a Sprite for years over at Pepsi.
I actually saw a video that whatever that original name was, there was a copyright problem, and so they had to change it.
They got trenched?
Was it Sierra Mist?
Sierra Mist, yeah.
So I guess there was like a influencer that went by Sierra Mist, and it became a problem. So they switched it to Starry.
Well,
anyway,
no, that's not why. It's because nobody went into the restaurant and asked for Sierra Mist.
No.
They asked for a 7-Up. They asked for Sprite.
I
just go in and ask for a refreshing lemon lime soda, and they're like, "All we have is Sierra Mist." I'm like, "No, I'm good, thanks."
Yeah, and the fact that they had,
it wasn't bad.
I mean, Radeon is not there yet, where they need to simply let's just make up a new brand. But I mean, it's a tough battle, right? So
yeah. It is. All right, last question, then we'll get out of here. It's a trivia question from Intel Cope Truth. Trivia. Which country outside of China/Taiwan currently has the most number of facilities of making/assembling tech components? Which country?
Outside of
China/Taiwan. Because obviously TSMC is in Taiwan and
China.
A lot is assembled in China. So
wait, can you read that again? Because
which country outside of China/Taiwan currently has the most number of facilities making/assembling tech components?
It's probably like Thailand or something, right?
Let's see.
Like that's where all the hard drive people are.
Malaysia?
It could be
Maybe.
Malaysia.
Malaysia or Vietnam.
I was thinking India, but I'm not sure.
India's up there for me too. Like Pegatron has India.
I don't know.
Is it fabs or assembly is the question?
Well, I think it's both.
Oh, South Korea. That's fair. If you throw Samsung and all the South Korean companies in there,
Samsung and LG,
yeah.
No.
Do
they know the answer?
Actually, yeah. Now that I'm reading it, they didn't necessarily.
Just ask a trivia question with no answer,
sorry.
Adam.
Well, they said as far as I know, Malaysia does most a lot of the last phase production, like final assembly of a CPU, and some of the lower volume Apple products.
Malaysia does a lot of the packaging. Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm not like. I guess I'd want to know. Do you mean like the cardboard packaging, or do you mean the physical packaging of the processors? And then it seems like a little bit open-ended, but
yeah,
I'm so sad that I don't have a firm answer.
I know. I guess I should have looked at the answer of this trivia question. They stated it so strongly, but yeah, no, Samsung. I bet Samsung. Well, but yeah. I don't know where they have their
I love that we don't
manufacturing
have an
now.
answer for this.
Yeah, sorry. If you know, please leave it in the description.
Up?
Investopedia says that China, Hong Kong, and the U.S. are the leaders in electronics production. I don't think we manufacture anything, though, really.
Well, doesn't Apple
There's a
have
fab in Oregon, right?
Well, then doesn't Apple have this?
Oregon remains one of the major producers of electronics goods.
Yeah.
$11.5 billion worth of integrated electronic circuits were exported out of Oregon.
There you go.
That doesn't sound like very much.
Yeah.
We'll see.
It comes
Find
down
out.
to how
Right.
you define what exactly electronics goods are and the value of it. I mean, I'm certain the fabs make plenty, but I'm not. I don't think that's. I don't know. Seems like a very open-ended question.
All of these articles seem like machine-generated crap.
No.
It's shocking.
Oh, should I ask Copilot?
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Oh, you know what? Here we go.
Yeah.
I'll get a
That's
definitive
awesome.
answer.
AI.
Here we go.
Asking AI.
Yeah, let me copy.
This is welcome to our new segment. Ask the AI.
Yeah, ask Copilot anything.
Are the answers right? Sure.
Powered by a Snapdragon X Elite.
Why
All right,
not?
Here. Okay, at least according to Copilot, Japan leads the way in hosting the maximum number of semiconductor manufacturing facilities with 102 fabrication plants, followed closely behind Taiwan boasts 77 plants. Okay, well, that's the number of plants.
Yeah, but we
Fair
have to go by
answer.
volume
Yeah.
as
But
well,
we-
don't we?
Yeah.
I
Meanwhile,
know we
China
only-
is fast establishing itself with 70 plants. Germany leads Europe with 20 plants. Yeah.
Does it have
So
the
that's
asterisk
the-
that
that's
says this
the-
may or may not be true?
I mean, that's everywhere, every
okay.
single time.
That's the
Yeah.
hard part. Like, it sounds right, but I don't believe a single lick of anything this thing tells me.
Yeah.
It's truthy enough.
Those numbers
Brad.
are all made up.
It's true somewhere.
Truthy.
It's true somewhere.
Are we only talking semiconductors too? Because I thought it was electronics.
Yeah.
Oh.
Also,
Like that could be everything
yeah.
from TVs
Well,
to.
Adam copied and pasted the question, so the machine answered what it
Yeah.
answered.
Hey, don't yell at me. Yell at Copilot. Yell at me for asking the question and not realizing they didn't have a definitive answer.
Started by this.
Yeah. Davina says you should do your Bill Clinton. It depends on how you
on the
define the
definition.
question. Yeah.
It depends on what you mean by electronics. See, I'm working on it. It's been a little while.
Pretty good. That's pretty good. You still got it as far as I'm
Yeah,
concerned.
Yeah,
Still spot
that's
on.
really good. I love it. All right.
Hey, you gonna finish that? Because that looks like pretty good. Hot dog.
Okay, that was weird. You lost it now.
Hey, Mr. President, how many rat pieces are in that hot dog?
Well, it's a
It's
classic Phil
lunchtime,
Hartman on
and I don't
SNL,
wanna-
right?
I don't want to talk about rats and hot dogs. I just want
They're all-
Yeah.
lunch.
I could go
For
for a hot
people-
I
dog.
could go for at least two.
Yeah.
For people overseas, there are actually
Rats
there's
in the
actually
hot dog.
guidance for the allowable amount of.
Everybody has that.
Yeah.
Like, there's a certain amount of rat hair that can be in chocolate. It's fine. It's just part of the
Oh my God,
process,
can
man.
we-
No, I just don't
want to
think.
eat my lunch in peace, people.
I suspect
We haven't had
I'm
lunch
sure-
yet, Will.
I suspect somebody overseas was like, "What? It's loud? Like this is ridiculous. Like, you actually have standards for this? Like, that's like what is the most American thing ever? The amount of rat parts allowed in a hot dog, right? That's definitely it.
On that note,
It's not just rats.
Yeah,
It's okay. It's not just
Bugs,
rats.
too.
Yeah. that's
Lunchtime
not
in
even-
As long as it's ground up enough and cooked.
Yeah,
I mean,
you
honestly,
can't
it's
tell.
just all protein, right? It's just all protein.
Yeah. Oh, somebody
Treated.
says rat hair equals flavor, and that somebody goes by the handle of bug.
Yeah.
Uh,
Certain amount of grasshopper legs allowed, too.
Actually, you know what? When I was in college, I just used to eat. I would crack open a bag of spinach.
Oh, I thought this was going to go someplace
No,
worse.
no. I would just crack open a bag of spinach and just eat it.
Supposed to watch that here now because of our standards.
Yeah, well,
problems.
you know, maybe that's what's wrong with me. But yeah, I kid you not. One time I reached in and I went to go take a munch and I looked down and there was a crispy grasshopper
You
on,
go,
it,
oh.
on the leaf. Yeah,
Sometimes you get a crunchy aphid surprise there.
yeah,
too.
yeah. And I was like, oh, okay. And that's when I learned about there's
you have to wash your vegetables.
percentage of okay
Yeah.
things in foods. So anyway.
It's like winning the lottery when you get one of those. It's
Actually-
the one that slipped through.
And actually, you know what? There's a company called Oaktown Crickets.
Yeah.
Have you heard of Oaktown Crickets?
Yeah.
Have you had?
Did they
Oaktown
grind them up
crickets?
into flour there?
No,
or is
no.
that-
They just roast the little crickets and put some seasoning on them.
Aw.
And they're
Those are
actually pretty
tasty.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They taste nutty.
Yeah,
right?
I don't mind
Yeah.
crickets, actually.
Yeah. It's Oaktown. So, Oakland
Well,
Pride, Gordon.
I mean,
It just
They
feels
sell it
like-
at the A's ballpark. Oh, wait. Oops.
I'm just saying it's nice.
Not
Like
anymore.
you get like that You get that pleasant cricket sound at night. You're like, it's so peaceful.
Yeah, and tasty.
Well,
And tasty, yeah.
can't we eat something that isn't like?
In the future, we're going to have
I mean,
cricket patties.
that's
I'm
pleasant.
ready for a cricket burger.
Yeah, you're going to be stoked to get crickets in the future at the rate we're going.
Yeah.
I would
good
rather eat
times.
something that's like, you feel good. Like
Like mealworms?
it's unfortunate, like you can't eat weeds. Like we just can't eat
I mean,
weeds.
you can.
know?
You just have to
I mean,
chew
you can
them
eat
a lot.
You can eat the weed. Yeah.
That's frowned upon in some states, though.
This feels like a bummer.
Anyway, we got to get out of here.
Yeah,
This has been a bummer episode. Somebody says we should end the show just by yelling at me, just to feel better. So go ahead.
Bring some crickets next time
That's
to the
gonna
next
make
show.
me feel better.
I haven't been able to find them.
But you should
Yeah.
we should get some of the flour, the bug flour, and make chocolate chip cookies. They were delish.
No, you get a jar of jelly and you throw ants in them. The ants eat them, and then you
God.
pop off the butts. I remember hearing about that too.
Pop off the butts.
Yeah.
Pop off the. Yeah. Okay. Never mind.
Okay, let's get out of here. Gordon doesn't like
okay.
this.
Gordon.
No, I'm just confused by that. I'm like, what are you talking about eating here? Like, I'll eat anything that's deep fried, but that's just a little confusing. So,
Deep fry the ant
Like
butts
Gordon's
full
rule.
of jelly.
Gordon's rule is anything that's deep fried. That's good.
Yeah.
I'm a Southerner. What can I say? So,
Yeah,
anyway,
that's true.
Southerner.
Look,
Oh God.
Southern, Southern.
let's go.
Come on, let's
go.
We're
And
getting out.
we're
We're
outta
getting
here.
out. We're getting out. Check back next week for your Fix It PC Talk on the Full Nerd. For audio listeners, subscribe to us on iTunes, Pocket Cast, or Spotify. And if you're on one of the services, please leave a review. Every time you do, you find out what percentage of rat parts are allowed in a Gordon Ung hot dog. Send questions and comments to thefullnerd@PCWorld.com. Thanks for coming. I'm Gordon Ung with Brad Charkas
Adios, y'all.
and Patrick Murray,
Bye. I'm gonna go eat a cricket burger.
Eleni Yee,
I really just wanted my lunch in peace, but here we are.
Will Smith,
I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
and Willis Lai is going to mercifully hit the off switch.
Thank you, Gordon. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. I'm gonna be on the lookout for rat, bits, whatever, on my on my burger. So be careful. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next time. Bye.
My God, what if they found a rat had fallen into the fab? Like one of the Intel fabs?
They're so sealed up they can't get in there. Oh, you think that's what the 13900 problem is?
Yeah.
Rat bits.
Goodbye.
All rats.